Chapter 1997. The gate of the formless palace on the island of Versatility was already open. A large number of formless palace cultivators gathered around the gate, but no one dared to act rashly. More than 10 sunshine cultivators from the three parties gathered near the island of Versatility, facing each other from afar. Shang Qingyu's face was solemn, because he had realized one thing. The formless palace's invasion of the Wanxiang Sea was a complete failure. Their plan was good and everything was going smoothly. However, no one expected Lu Yi to jump out just as they were about to retreat. Shang Qingyu looked at Lu Yi with a deep gaze, as if he was trying to remember his appearance. Then he turned to Ma Bin and said, "Brother Ma, you and Brother Lu are." Ma Bin said calmly, "Lu Yi saved my life. What do you want?" Shang Qingyu sighed slightly. "If that's the case, then my formless palace will give face to fellow Taoist Ma." As he said this, he gently shouted, "Leave everything behind." In this situation, the formless palace had no chance to turn the tables. Since they had to admit defeat, it was not shameful to admit defeat to the Azure Demon King Ma Bin. After all, he was famous. This was actually a way out for Shang Qingyu. Everyone could tell, but no one pointed it out. As soon as he gave the order, the cultivators of the formless palace on the island of Versatility unwillingly threw their storage rings filled with loot onto the ground. In the blink of an eye, there were thousands of storage rings in that area. Countless eyes were focused on that area. Shang Qingyu looked at Lu Yi. "Are you satisfied with this?" Lu Yi looked at him. "You can only leave after you leave all your storage rings behind. If anyone dares to hide anything, don't blame me for being ruthless." As he spoke, he stared at Shang Qingyu's right hand. Shang Qingyu was stunned. He subconsciously touched the storage ring on his right hand. "This is mine. You still have to leave it behind." Shang Qingyu was so angry that he started laughing. This was truly the first time in history that the robbers had actually been robbed. Unfortunately, it was not good for him to fall out with them because at this moment, not only were Lu Yi and Ma Bin looking at them, there were also the 6 great sons of the 10,000 Elephant Sea glaring at them covetously. He was sure that Yuan Sei and the others couldn't wait for them to clash with Lu Yi and Ma Bin again. This way they could join forces to pressure them. When the time came, the people from Formless Palace wouldn't be able to leave even if they wanted to. Suppressing the anger in his heart, Shang Qingyu nodded slightly. "All right, as you wish." After saying this, he took off his storage ring and threw it toward the island of Versatility. "And them?" Lu Yi raised his Panshan blade and pointed at the Rizhao beside Shang Qingyu. Each and every one of these faceless palaces Rizhao looked extremely humiliated. However, Shang Qingyu had already handed over his storage ring. How could they resist? They had no choice but to take off their storage rings one by one and throw them away. Countless cultivators watched this scene from afar. For a moment, they felt a sense of relief as if they had vented their frustrations. No matter which galaxy they came from or which domain they came from, since they had come to the Wanxiang Sea, they were here to make a living. They were a part of this place. The Wanxiang Palace had suddenly invaded and treated them like pigs and dogs, slaughtering them at will. The Wanxiang Galaxy was unable to protect them and could not resist at all. And it was under such desperate circumstances that Lu Yi of the Three-World Island came out and killed the Rizhao. He deterred everyone and ruthlessly dispelled the arrogance of the Formless Palace. Now, not only did he force these thieves to give up their loot, but they also couldn't keep their own storage rings. This was really satisfying. Compared to the various responses of the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy to this invasion, Lu Ye's approach was undoubtedly more popular. "Can we go now?" Shang Qingyu looked at Lu Yi and asked. Lu Yi remained silent with a cold expression. In another direction, Yuan Sei stared at him without blinking. His eyes were secretly filled with anticipation. As soon as Lu Yi gave the order, he would immediately lead the other Rizhao to surround and kill the people of the Formless Palace. Now that they had returned the loot, they naturally had to kill them all. However, he felt that it was a pity that Lu Yi obviously had no intention of doing so. "Go back and tell your palace master that in the future, I have the final say in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. If anyone dares to cause trouble again, I will kill them all." Scram. Shang Qingyu blinked when he heard this, then looked at Yuan Sei and the others beside him and said, "The Formless Palace will remember what you have done today, fellow Taoist." As he spoke, he floated backward and arrived in front of the door in a few steps. He shouted, "Let's go." At this moment, the cultivators of the Formless Palace who had been waiting for a long time began to hurriedly retreat through the door. The first to leave was the Constellation Division, followed by Yu Yao. Shang Qingyu brought up the rear with a few Rizhao. He had been wary of Lu Yi and Ma Bin, but until the few Rizhao disappeared through the door one after another, Lu Yi and Ma Bin did not move. We've been tricked. This thought flashed through Shang Qingyu's mind. He could finally confirm one thing. The treasure that could shoot out the golden light was not unlimited. Lu Yi could no longer activate the power of the treasure. Otherwise he would not have let them leave so easily. With the strange power of the treasure, Lu Yi alone was enough to kill them all. However, there was no point in confirming this now. In other words, although he had his doubts before, he could only be completely sure after he left. This was an unsolvable situation. The door slowly disappeared. It was obvious that the formless palace had closed. This invasion war was declared over with the retreat of the formless palace cultivators. However, before the cultivators watching from afar could cheer in excitement, another change occurred. Attack. Following Yuan Sei's order, 4 of the 6 Rizhao from the 10,000 Elephant Sea attacked Ma Bin. Yuan Sei and Jianghu from the Heaven Flame domain attacked Lu Yi. No one knew why this happened. Because just now, the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy had secretly joined forces with Lu Yi to put pressure on the Formless Palace. However, after the people from the Formless Palace left, they turned their backs on them in the blink of an eye. This change shocked everyone. They could only sigh at how quickly the Rizhao changed his mind and stance. I knew you wouldn't accept this. Lu Yi turned to look at Yuan Sei with a cold expression. However, he was not surprised by the actions of the 6 Rizhao from the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Instead, he looked as if he had expected this. Yuan Sei snorted. The 10,000 Elephant Sea is not for you to tell us what to do. An old fox like him who had lived for countless years was difficult to fathom. However, it was undeniable that such a veteran Rizhao was very perceptive. At the last moment of their retreat, Shang Qingyu confirmed that Lu Yi could no longer activate the golden light of the treasure. Yuan Sei naturally thought of this too. What they were afraid of was nothing more than the strange golden light. For a new Rizhao like Lu Yi, without the treasure, who would take a second look? There was also another fact. Ma Bin was the enemy of the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy. Back then he had forced his way into the 10,000 Elephant Island and killed a Rizhao guard. There was also the death of Yuan Du, Gu Shi and Qin Xuanba. Yuan Sei had already confirmed their deaths on the way here. He originally thought that the 3 of them were most likely killed by the Formless Palace. However, after seeing Lu Ye's methods and hearing Mu Qing's report, Yuan Sei immediately concluded that Yuan Du and the others were killed by Lu Yi. Mu Qing had seen the scene of Yuan Du being injured and Gu Shi and Qin Xuanba being imprisoned by the golden light. At that time, the people from the Formless Palace had yet to invade. Both Lu Yi and Ma Bin had great enmity with the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy. Previously, when they were facing the invaders from the Formless Palace, Yuan Sei could stand on their side. However, when the Formless Palace left, this fragile alliance was instantly shattered. The real reason why Yuan Sei made up his mind was because of one sentence from Lu Yi. He had previously said that he would have the final say in the 10,000 Elephant Sea in the future. This clearly meant that he wanted to get his hands on the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Based on his prestige today and the fact that he had resolved the Formless Palace's invasion, if he really stood up, he would probably be more popular than the people of the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy. The 10,000 Elephant Sea had always belonged to the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy. Since when was it a place for an outsider to dictate? If Lu Yi was not dealt with today, the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy would completely lose control of the precious land that was the 10,000 Elephant Sea. It was true that the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy had not handled the invasion well. If Lu Yi had not come out in the end, all the looted goods from the Formless Palace would have been taken away. However, this did not mean that the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy should be grateful to Lu Yi. His actions and words had already touched on the fundamental interests of the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy. This was what Yuan Sei could not tolerate. It was very likely that Lu Yi would no longer be able to activate the golden light. As for Ma Bin, according to Imo Wenli, he was already injured. Now that he had expended a great deal of effort to kill the great demon Venerable He Yun, his condition must be even worse. It could be said that there was no better opportunity than now to get rid of Lu Yi and Ma Bin. As long as they succeeded, the 10,000 Elephant Sea would return to the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy's control. The battle started again. In order to quickly take down Lu Yi, Yuan Sei had even taken action himself. Moreover, Yan Gai was on the side to provide support. Although they were certain that Lu Yi would no longer be able to activate the power of the treasure, they still had to be on guard. In case Lu Yi could still activate it, the 2 of them combined were enough to ensure that one of them could take down Lu Yi. However, what shocked Yuan Sei the most was that in the face of their attack, Lu Yi directly jumped into the 10,000 Elephant Sea after saying that sentence. Only one sentence was heard, "Just you wait." With a splash, water splashed everywhere. Yuan Sei was dumbfounded. Yan Gai was also dumbfounded. They had anticipated many possible scenarios, including Lu Yi activating the golden light again. However, they did not expect that Lu Yi would actually jump into the 10,000 Elephant Sea on his own accord. Was the 10,000 Elephant Sea so easy to jump into? Yuan Du's sunshine had only been in the sea for a moment, but he had already been eroded to a tragic state. His spiritual power was extremely turbid. Lu Yi, a newly advanced sunshine cultivator, would only be in a worse state than Yuan Du if he jumped in. Yuan Sei was delighted at first. He was delighted that his judgment was right. Lu Yi really could no longer activate the golden light. Otherwise he would not have jumped into the sea. Then his expression became uncertain. No one would actively seek death, especially a sunshine cultivator. If he could not win, he would at least try. If he really could not win, it would not be too late to jump into the sea. Moreover, Lu Yi had left behind such words. Obviously he would not give up so easily. Could he solve the problem of the 10,000 Elephant Sea's erosion? Otherwise, why would he jump into the sea to escape? End of chapter. Chapter 1998. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Lu Yi escaped by jumping into the sea. Yuan Sei was shocked and could only turn to look at Ma Bin. However, what he saw made him even more depressed. Ma Bin was facing the siege of the four sunshine of the Wanxiang Sea, but he escaped without looking back. His condition was extremely bad. How could he fight under such circumstances? Moreover, he had received Lu Ye's secret message. Hence, when Yuan Sei and the others made their move, he immediately followed Lu Ye's instructions and escaped far away. Chase. Yuan Sei was furious as he chased after Ma Bin. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If he missed it today, it would be difficult to kill Ma Bin in the future. He could not chase after Lu Yi from the Three-World Island who jumped into the sea to escape. Ma Bin did not have the ability and courage to do so. In an instant, the six sunshines split into two groups and chased after Ma Bin. On the reef island, Tao Wu, who had witnessed the conflict from beginning to end, was worried. He looked at Hua Xiai beside him and asked, "Friend, are you not worried?" He did not know the relationship between Lu Yi and Hua Xiai. He had never seen Hua Xiai before. However, since Lu Yi came with Hua Xiai and looked very close, it was obvious that their relationship was not ordinary. However, now that Lu Yi was forced to jump into the sea, Hua Xiai did not look worried at all. Tao Wu could not understand. This was the Wanxiang Sea. Even if Lu Yi had reached the sunshine level, how could he end up well after falling into the sea? Hua Xiai only smiled and shook her head. She had a mysterious look on her face. Tao Wu scratched his head. His face was full of worry. Lu Yi had saved his life. If it was within his power, he would not sit by and do nothing. Just like when the Three-World Islands development was hindered, he stood his ground and opened a branch of the Rainbow Chamber of Commerce in the Three-World Island. However, today's battle was beyond his control. Hence, although he was worried and anxious, there was nothing he could do. He only knew one thing. The Wanxiang Sea would be in complete chaos from today onwards. The sunshine of the Wanxiang Galaxy had lost a lot. The major spiritual islands had also lost a lot. The factions behind these spiritual islands would not let this matter rest. When the time came, they would come to the Wanxiang Sea to demand an explanation. The Wanxiang Galaxy, which had just experienced a great change, would not be able to withstand such pressure. When the time came, the vast Wanxiang Sea would probably be divided into different factions. Even the five-color realm where he came from would have to send Rizhao to take care of it. Over the years, the myriad phenomenon galaxy had set various rules. Although it was sometimes inconvenient, it was precisely because of these rules that this place was able to become the center of many galaxies and flourish for countless years. If these rules were to disappear one day, then it would probably be impossible for small powers to survive in the entire myriad ocean. At that time, it would definitely be divided up by those top powers. This was definitely not a long-term solution. Just as Bai En was thinking about this, he suddenly raised his head and looked into the distance. At a glance, he saw a stream of light rapidly approaching. "Why are you back again?" Bai En was astonished. There were many people who were just as confused as him, because Ma Bin, who had escaped earlier, had flown back, followed by the six sons of the Vientiane Galaxy. They were filled with killing intent. Even with Bai An's eyesight, he could tell that something was wrong with Ma Bin's condition because his Rizhao's aura was fluctuating. This was obviously a sign of serious injury. It was probably because of his poor condition that Ma Bin was unable to escape from the pursuit of the six Rikashi. If this situation continued, Ma Bin would definitely die. Soon, the Rikashi's figures swept past the island of versatility. Like reincarnation, Ma Bin continued to escape. Yuan Sei led the other Rikashi in hot pursuit, like maggots in a corpse. Splash! A sound was heard, and a figure leaped out from under the myriad phenomenon sea. He shouted, "Yuan Sei, die! Brother Lu!" Bai, and immediately discovered Lu Ye's figure and immediately widened his eyes. He wanted to see if Lu Yi had been eroded by the myriad phenomenon sea's water. However, under his observation, Lu Yi did not show any signs of being eroded. Instead, his magic power was surging like waves, and he seemed to be in a better state than before. At the same time as Lu Ye's shout, a familiar golden light shot out. Yuan Sei, who was chasing after Ma Bin, instinctively turned his head when he heard Lu Ye's shout. His expression changed drastically. "Oh no!" He reacted quickly and immediately summoned a magic treasure to protect himself. At the same time, his body moved left and right unsteadily. However, he soon experienced what the Rikashi felt when they were targeted by Lu Yi. When the golden light flashed and attacked, no matter how he dodged, he felt that it was impossible to avoid it. When the golden light covered his body, Yuan Sei's magic power suddenly froze. Even the magic treasure protecting his body was covered by the golden light and lost its spirituality. Lu Yi raised his saber and charged at him aggressively. Mu Qing and the others' expressions changed drastically. On the side, Jianghu reached out and grabbed Yuan Sei, who was imprisoned by the golden light, and saved him from the fate of falling into the myriad phenomenon sea. How could he continue chasing after Ma Bin? Seeing Lu Ye's menacing aura again, Yang Kai couldn't help feeling apprehensive and immediately shouted, "Run!" Yuan Sei's guess was wrong. Lu Yi could still summon the power of the golden light. However, he did not use it just now. Instead, it caught them off guard. The reason why Ma Bin led them back in circles was obviously because he had discussed it with Lu Yi beforehand. There were only 6 Rikashi left in the myriad phenomenon galaxy. Now that Yuan Sei, who was the strongest, was hit, if Lu Yi summoned the golden light a few more times, wouldn't they be wiped out? The others began to panic as well. Following Yengu's words, they all ran off in different directions, quickly disappearing from sight. Lu Yi chased for a while with his blade and could only watch as Jianghu and Yuan Sei disappeared into the distance. He had no choice. He had just reached the Rikashi level and had not stabilized his cultivation. In terms of speed, he was not as fast as Jianghu. Of course, if he used blood escape, he might have a chance to catch up. However, in that short period of time, the Pai Xiu swallowed the water of the myriad phenomenon sea was barely enough to summon the power of one golden light. It was impossible to summon a second one, so it was meaningless even if he caught up. His aggressive pursuit was more for show. After a while, Lu Yi stopped and slowly put away his Panshan blade. The fierce battle between the Rikashi level and the Rikashi level had finally come to an end. The changes in the middle were too much for the cultivators to take in. In just one day, more than 20 Rikashi level cultivators had appeared on the myriad phenomenon sea. This was something that had not happened for many years. However, at this moment only Lu Yi was still standing. Countless eyes were looking from all directions. The cultivators with some foresight understood one thing clearly. From today onwards, the myriad phenomenon sea had changed. The people of the formless palace were forced to retreat. The Rikashi-level cultivators of the myriad phenomenon galaxy fled pathetically. The vast myriad phenomenon sea would probably belong to the Lu family in the future. This was undoubtedly a historical moment. Although they did not participate in it personally, being able to witness it with their own eyes still made many cultivators excited. Messages were sent by different cultivators and quickly spread in all directions. On the myriad phenomenon island, Lu Yi slowly landed and looked at the small mountain of storage rings on the ground. These were left behind by the formless palace cultivators before they left. Until now, no one dared to touch them. Ma Bin had returned. He landed not far from Lu Yi and nodded slightly at him. He seemed to be fine, but Lu Yi smelled a trace of blood on him. This was caused by Ma Bin's inability to suppress his qi and blood. Obviously, he was not in good condition. 2 more figures flew over. They were Luan Xiaoa and Yen Miao, who had been guarding the four-corner island. Lu Yi had sent them a message earlier, asking them to come over. However, even if they were in the Rikashi level, it would still take some time for them to arrive. The 4 Rikashi of the 3-world island were gathered in one place. Lu Yi looked left and right. He could clearly feel that at this moment, countless gazes were focused on him from all directions. To him, today's battle was over. However, to the myriad phenomenon sea and the cultivators here, some things were just the beginning. He had a plan in mind. He leaped into the air with a myriad of emotions. Back then, when he was chased by Old Tang, he accidentally fell into the myriad phenomenon sea through the insect path. When he first saw the magnificence and prosperity of this place, both he and Old Tang were like country bumpkins who had never seen the world. In a foreign land, the two of them put aside their grudges and formed a team. During this period he struggled to survive while Old Tang wandered about. Later, he obtained the minor constellation palace and built Matchless Island. Only then did he gain a foothold on the myriad phenomenon sea. With the guidance of the reincarnation tree, he returned to the Jade Snail Galaxy without hesitation. He brought the cultivators of his homeland to the myriad phenomenon sea to pursue their dreams. In the end he came full of expectations, only to find that Matchless Island had changed owners. Even Old Tang, who had stayed behind, was almost killed. He was not as strong as others, so he could only endure. Instead he built the Three-World Island, fought the Baiwe and defeated Zixuan. He established his reputation as the #1 cultivator under the Rikashi. With a long saber he carved out a bloody path. The cultivators of the Three-World Island finally had a stable cultivation environment. If there were no accidents, Lu Yi would have to leave the Three-World Island after ascending to the Rikashi level. At that time, without the protection of his reputation, the future of the Three-World Island would be uncertain. However, no one expected Yuandu to do that. The person who set the rules did not follow them. It was the biggest joke in the world. Even at that time Lu Yi did not think much of it. He wanted to take the opportunity to retreat and move the Three-World Island to the bottom of the sea. In the end, Ma Bin, who could not bear to see him suffer, appeared out of nowhere. Then it was Yaya and then Hua Xiai. Unwilling to be left out, unwilling to watch helplessly, he broke the taboo, activated the power of the talent tree, polished his spiritual source, and quickly ascended to the Rikashi level to participate in the battle. Step by step to reach this level. It was fate, helplessness, and forced by the situation. However, at this moment, Lu Yi realized that the result was not bad. Since they could break the rules set by others, then the rules of the myriad phenomenon sea should be set by themselves. Anyone who dared to break the rules would be killed without mercy. From today onwards, all spiritual islands in the myriad phenomenon sea, big and small, will be under the jurisdiction of the Three-World Island. If anyone is unwilling, leave the myriad phenomenon sea within 2 months. Chapter 1999. Lu Ye's voice was not loud, but under the influence of the sunshine's magical power, it spread out in layers until it covered the entire Wanxiang Sea. In a short while, all the cultivators in the Wanxiang Sea heard his announcement. The 6 sunshine who had fled to the edge of the Wanxiang Sea turned around abruptly. How dare he? Mo Wenli gritted his teeth and growled. He was clearly trying to take over the Wanxiang Sea. The Wanxiang Sea had always belonged to the local galaxy. There had been a few crises in the past, but no one had ever been able to overturn the local galaxy's dominance. Until today, 3 of the original 5 Sunshine Guards had died. Although another 4 had come to help, they could not defend themselves against the strange golden light. Now they were fleeing in panic and had lost all face. In the face of the Formless Palace's power, they were powerless. However, Lu Yi forced the Formless Palace to leave behind all the looted goods. Many cultivators saw such a stark contrast. Now Lu Yi was obviously more capable of protecting the Wanxiang Sea's interests than they were. He was better at protecting the Wanxiang Sea's cultivators in the face of a powerful foreign invasion. If Lu Yi really wanted to take over the Wanxiang Sea and take over the Wanxiang Sea, the local galaxy could not do anything. Summon Jiyan back. Yuan Sei transmitted his voice as his divine consciousness surged. He looked defeated. There was nothing they could do in the current situation. They could only summon Jiyan back and let her handle it. They heard that Jiyan had a good relationship with the Three-World Island. Perhaps if Jiyan stepped in, there was still room for negotiation. Otherwise, if someone else really took over the Wanxiang Sea, the local galaxy would become the laughingstock of the entire cultivation world. On the Wanxiang Island, Lu Ye's voice sounded again. The Formless Palace's looted goods will be kept by the island for now. The major spiritual islands will be responsible for the losses. You can come to the island to collect the looted goods after 10 days. As soon as he said this, Ming Dang, who was on the distant reef island, rolled his eyes and shouted, "Island Master Lu, are you serious? Are you really willing to return the looted goods of the major spiritual islands?" He had an excited expression on his face as if he had suffered a huge loss in the previous incident, but in fact he had foresight. Long before the Formless Palace attacked the 5-colored island, he had left with a large number of resources and cultivators. Although the five-colored island had suffered losses, the losses were not great. Now that he had spoken, he was undoubtedly echoing Lu Ye's words, because he had vaguely seen through Lu Ye's intentions. With a top-tier spiritual island master like him speaking in agreement, it would undoubtedly make it easier for Lu Ye to carry out his plan. He was not the only one. Countless cultivators in the entire 10,000 Elephant Sea were overjoyed. After this incident, countless people had died. All the top-grade spiritual islands and even some of the high-grade spiritual islands had suffered a calamity. The dead couldn't be resurrected, so they didn't think much about the looted goods, even though Lu Ye had already forced the people of Formless Palace to leave everything behind. No one had expected that Lu Ye would be willing to return it. This was undoubtedly a pleasant surprise. Smart people could tell that this was Lu Ye's move to win over the people. If he wanted to control the 10,000 Elephant Sea, he would need the support of the various forces behind the major spiritual islands. By paying a price and gaining the support of the various forces, it would undoubtedly be easier for him to control the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Compared to the benefits he could obtain in the future, what was the price he paid now? Moreover, he had obtained these goods by robbing the people of Formless Palace in the first place. But even so, the fact that Lu Ye could do such a thing still gave people a good impression of him. Many people secretly praised Lu Ye in their hearts. If it were someone else who didn't have such a big plan and stood in Lu Ye's position, they would have already taken all the resources for themselves. Of course. Lu Ye nodded slightly and said, "Also, after this incident, the forces behind the various spiritual islands may send Rizhao to investigate the situation. Please tell Rizhao to report to the Three-World Island immediately when he comes to the 10,000 Elephant Sea and do not cause any trouble. The rules of the 10,000 Elephant Sea are the same as before. If anyone dares to break the rules, the Three-World Island will not let them off easily." To be honest, the rules of the 10,000 Elephant Sea were quite useful. Under the restrictions of the various rules, it could ensure that even if a conflict broke out in the 10,000 Elephant Sea, the scale of the conflict would not be too big. This made it easier to govern. Admittedly, some of the rules were unreasonable. However, these rules had been in place for tens of thousands of years and were deeply rooted. Lu Ye did not intend to change them too much. Now that the Three-World Island had just taken over the 10,000 Elephant Sea, there were some things that could not be rushed. Therefore it was best to stick to the previous rules. Thousands of storage rings were kept by Lu Ye into the Little Flower World. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he called out and a few figures followed closely behind him. They flew towards the Three-World Island. After he left, more news was passed on through the hands of cultivators. Today's battle had turned the 10,000 Elephant Sea upside down. This treasured land that had been ruled by the local galaxy for countless years had completely changed owners. Such a major event was rare in the entire starry sky. The forces behind the top spiritual islands naturally needed to know first-hand information. Today's battle was destined to be recorded in the annals of history. After all, as many as 7 Rizhao had died. In this battle, the local galaxy suffered great losses and the Formless Palace was covered in dirt. On the other hand, the first island master of the Three-World Island, who had just been promoted to Rizhao, had reaped great rewards. The news of Lu Ye controlling the Golden Light-type treasure and having a strong sealing power against Rikishi also spread quickly. A newly promoted Rikishi was indeed nothing, but such a strange and difficult to guard against Rikishi was not something that could be taken lightly. The key was that such an attribute treasure had been activated several times in the short span of one day. It was this attribute treasure that gave the newly promoted Rizhao the confidence to declare his rule over the 10,000 Elephant Sea. On the Three-World Island, Lu Ye and the others returned. Ma Bin immediately entered the Spirit Jade Mine to heal his injuries. This battle had not only made his recovery over the past year go up in smoke, but also worsened his injuries. Before this, he had forcefully suppressed it in front of outsiders. Now that he had returned to the Three-World Island, he could no longer suppress it. Lu Ye personally sent him into the Spirit Jade Mine. Seeing that he had entered a state of recovery, he was relieved. When he came out, Wan Xiaoa and Yen Miao were waiting outside. Lu Ye glanced at Yen Miao and ordered, "First Elder, please go back and bring back the blue sea snail. Also, inform the island's cultivators of the changes here." When the Three-World Islands cultivators had left, the blue sea snail was taken to the mermaid territory by second senior sister. If they wanted to return now, they had to bring the blue sea snail back and blow it on the island to open the door to the sea. This was not difficult for Yen Miao, who had already been promoted to Rizhao. It should only take a few days. Okay. Yen Miao immediately nodded in agreement. He flashed out of the three-world island and disappeared into the sea. "Junior brother, what do I need to do?" Wan Xiao asked. Lu Yi looked at her and then at Hua Xi, who was standing not far away. He said, "There's nothing to do for now. Senior sister, please take care of Hua Xi." Although he had made a name for himself in today's battle, he did not rely on his own abilities. He relied more on the Pishio's golden light. His own abilities were not enough to conquer or even rule the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Although it was unlikely that anyone would come to the three-world island to cause trouble, there were still some things that he had to take precautions against. Hua Xi was the Pishio's master. Hence, nothing must happen to her. With Wan Xiao by his side to protect him, he felt more at ease. He actually wanted to have a good chat with Hua Xi. Based on their interaction this time, something was wrong with Hua Xi. She seemed to have lost her memory. But now was not the time. He still had some problems to solve. Lu Yi sat down cross-legged in front of the entrance of the Spirit Jade Mine. The three-world island's protective array had not been rebuilt yet. The entire Spirit Island was in a defenseless state. It was the easiest time for outsiders to invade. If he stayed here, he could better protect Ma Bin, who was recuperating. He immersed his mind and felt the changes in his body. After reaching the Sunshine Realm, his spiritual power, physique, and even soul power had increased tremendously. This was an overall transformation brought about by a major realm increase. As his realm gradually stabilized, this growth would continue for a while. It was just that it would not be as strong as before. Now that he had already condensed the flower of the body and the flower of Qi, the next step was to condense the flower of the god when he reached the limit of the Sunshine Realm. This should not be too difficult for him. The Rainbow God Lotus had been nourishing his soul. His soul power was constantly growing. Furthermore, he could enter the ancestral land of the Soul Clan at any time. Cultivating soul power in that place would definitely yield twice the results with half the effort. Looking at the entire cultivation of the three flower, only the flower of the Qi required energy and time. After passing this hurdle, the rest of the journey would be smooth. Lu Yi was looking forward to the changes that would happen to him after he condensed the flower of the god. He also wanted to know what the secret of the three flowers would entail. However, that would be a long time in the future. Right now, he had an urgent problem that needed to be solved. As he immersed his mind, he could clearly see a black fruit hanging on a branch on the talent tree. He could feel that this fruit was filled with a cold and ominous aura. If he listened carefully, he seemed to be able to hear a wailing sound coming from inside. In a calm state, this black fruit did not seem to have any effect on him. However, Lu Yi knew that once his emotions fluctuated, this fruit would cause a huge distortion in his heart. Today, he had fought with others several times. His heart was filled with ruthlessness. When he captured Rizhao from the Formless Palace, he even had the urge to devour them. It was the greed and addiction that came with having tasted the marrow. Fortunately, he did not really do that, however he could persevere this time. What about the next time? And the time after that? Lu Yi did not want to be the second Zhao Yan, so he had to find a way to get rid of this black fruit. There was something to take care of. End of chapter. Chapter 2000. Lu Yi knew that the formation of the black fruit was inseparable from the foundation of those cultivators he had devoured. Whether it was Su Yuqing or Ma Bin, they had both told him that the Tao tree could burn all things in the world, except for the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Therefore, he guessed that this black fruit should be the condensation of the 7 emotions and 6 desires of those cultivators he had devoured. It was precisely because of this that it would affect his own temperament. How should he deal with this thing? Lu Yi wanted to pick it, but this was not a real fruit and could not be touched at all. Naturally, he could not pick it. He then turned to the power of the talent tree, wanting to burn this fruit, but no matter how he urged it, the fruit was safe and sound, showing no signs of being burned. Over the next few days, Lu Yi had lost count of the number of attempts he made, but he was unable to do anything to the black fruit. In fact, because of his repeated failures, his mood became even more irritable. The black fruit began to emit a black mist. As the mist spread, Lu Ye's aura underwent a huge change, becoming gloomier, and there was a bloodthirsty impulse in the depths of his heart. Sensing that something was wrong, he quickly calmed his mind and slowly calmed the distracting thoughts in his heart. After a full 2 hours, Lu Yi slowly recovered. After thinking for a moment, he raised his hand and pointed forward. A section of the root of the talent tree extended from his fingertip. With this as the foundation, a large amount of aura gathered, and the power of magic power and divine soul also surged endlessly. In the blink of an eye, a doppelganger appeared in front of him. It was the talent tree doppelganger. Lu Yi had not constructed a talent tree doppelganger for a long time because relatively speaking, the precious blood doppelganger was more convenient and faster, and there were more of them. The talent tree doppelganger required a section of the root of the talent tree as the foundation to be constructed. If there was an accident, the split talent tree doppelganger would probably be lost. Unlike the precious blood doppelganger, even if it was destroyed, it would not have much impact on him. This time, constructing the talent tree doppelganger was a helpless attempt, and it was also a flash of inspiration in his mind. The moment the talent tree doppelganger was formed, Lu Yi could not help but raise his eyebrows, and a look of pleasant surprise appeared on his face. This was because he found that the black fruit hanging on the top of the talent tree doppelganger was obviously smaller. Was it really possible? Lu Yi was overjoyed. The reason he attempted to construct the talent tree avatar was because in the process of constructing this avatar, he needed to split off a portion of his foundation. Not only did this include the roots of the talent tree, but it also included his blood essence, magic power, and soul force. If that was the case, would the black fruit also be split? It was because of this that he decided to give it a try. The results proved that the black fruit had indeed been split. In that case, he only needed to destroy the talent tree clone, which was equivalent to destroying a part of the black fruit. Then he could construct a new talent tree avatar and continue to destroy it. By dividing the black fruit again and again, he would be able to completely destroy it sooner or later. Lu Yi thought so, but he didn't dare to make a move. A long time ago he had a feeling that if the talent tree was lost or destroyed, it would not be a good thing for him. Furthermore, if he were to use this method to deal with the black fruit, it would not be possible with just one talent tree clone. He would need a lot. He didn't even know if he would be able to condense another talent tree clone after losing it. The talent tree was extremely important to him, and he couldn't afford to be careless. Therefore, although he had discovered such a method, Lu Yi couldn't really do it. On second thought, didn't Zhao Yan discover this method back then? He should have discovered it, but he still couldn't solve his problem. This meant that this method was feasible but not advisable. In the end, Lu Yi didn't destroy his talent tree clone because he didn't dare to take the risk. However, just as he withdrew his talent tree clone, he suddenly remembered something. Not only did he have the talent tree clone, but he also had the treasure blood clone. The talent tree clone couldn't be destroyed at will, but the treasure blood clone didn't have this concern. If one was destroyed, he would still have a second one. Even if they were all destroyed, he could still condense another one. If the treasure blood clone could split the black fruit. Thinking of this, Lu Ye's mind suddenly became active. He immediately activated the treasure blood clone and condensed it. However, after the treasure blood clone appeared, the black fruit didn't change. This made him a little disappointed, but he didn't give up. Instead, he made more attempts. This was because he had found a way to solve his current problem. He had a premonition that this might be the only right direction for him. Moreover, this was an advantage he had that Zhao Yan didn't have. As he kept trying, he didn't notice the passage of time until Wan Xiao called out softly, "Junior brother." Lu Yi opened his eyes and looked at her in a daze. Wan Xiao said, "The cultivators of this island have all returned. There's only 1 day left before the 10-day deadline you set. Tomorrow the major spiritual islands should come to retrieve their lost resources. What do you think?" Lu Yi slowly came back to his senses and realized that there was a group of people standing behind Wan Xiao. The people of Yu Yao's level on this island were all there, as well as some old seniors he was familiar with in Jiuzhou. No one had expected that the situation on the Wanxiang Sea would change so drastically in just a few days. They had followed Lu Ye's instructions and moved to the mermaid clan's territory under the sea to take refuge. However, in just a few days, Yan Miao suddenly returned and told everyone that the three-world island was now in charge of the Wanxiang Sea. Lu Yi had advanced to Rizhao and killed many of them as if he were cutting vegetables. Not only did he stop the invasion of a powerful force called the Formless Palace, but he also defeated Rizhao from the local star system. When they heard the news from Yan Miao, no one dared to believe it. After all, it was too unbelievable. However, everyone knew that Yan Miao wouldn't joke about such things. Through the portal opened by the Azure Sea Snail, the cultivators of the three-world island returned. After confirming that the situation here was as Yan Miao had said, they felt extremely conflicted. Just 10 days ago they had to flee in the face of danger. However, after returning they somehow became the master of the Wanxiang Sea. This change was earth-shattering and caught everyone off guard. However, regardless of whether they were mentally prepared or not, being able to rule the Wanxiang Sea was a great thing for the cultivators of the Jade Conch boundary. This was a land of treasures. It was the reason why the Wanxiang Galaxy was so powerful today. If the Jade Conch boundary could control this place, it wouldn't take long for it to become as powerful as the Wanxiang galaxy. Wan Xiao didn't want to disturb Lu Yi. Naturally, she could tell that Lu Yi was comprehending something recently. However, now that the 10-day deadline was approaching, she had no choice but to interrupt Lu Ye's comprehension. Lu Yi understood. He glanced at everyone and nodded slightly. Then he took out the storage rings from the Little Flower Realm. I'll have to trouble you to check the resources in here and prepare for the handover of resources to the major spiritual islands tomorrow. Tang Jun looked at him with interest. Are you really willing to return so many good things to the spiritual islands? As far as I know, the resources in here include at least 10 top-grade spiritual islands and 18 superior-grade spiritual islands. This number is huge. If these things are given to the three-world island for our own use, it shouldn't be a problem to supply us for a few hundred years. Lu Yi said, I've already said it. It's too late to regret it now. Or do you have any good advice? Tang Jun chuckled, what advice? However, this way the three-world island will be more popular. It's not a loss to use these resources in exchange for better governance in the future. Without a doubt, he could tell what Lu Yi was planning. Although the resources were huge, the hearts of the people were harder to come by. If the three-world island really had the power to suppress the Wanxiang Sea, they wouldn't need to win over the hearts of the people. If anyone dared to oppose them, they could just suppress them forcefully. However, the three-world island didn't have such power now. The only thing that the three-world island could use now was the golden light of the Pai Xiu. Perhaps after Ma Bin recovered, he could become the mainstay of the three-world island. However, that wasn't the case now. Resources could be earned at any time in the future. Other things aside, the three-world island alone could earn them a lot of money every day. Originally, Lu Yi would have to leave the Wanxiang Sea after he became a Rizhao. The fate of the three-world island was hard to predict. However, there was no need to worry about that now. As long as Lu Yi could control the Wanxiang Sea, the three-world island would always be the three-world island. There was another point that Tang Jun didn't mention, but everyone was well aware of it. The largest portion of the looted resources was from the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce. It took up almost half of the share. The other forces would probably send people to hand over the looted resources tomorrow. However, who would dare to come from the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce? Even if someone really came, the three-world island wouldn't care about it. This portion was destined to be taken by the three-world island. Apart from that, there was also the Purple Jade Island. The Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce would never send people to hand over the resources, so the Purple Jade Island definitely wouldn't. In fact, there was no one left in the Purple Jade Island. All the Purple Jade beast cultivators had fled. Obviously, they were afraid of being punished by Lu Yi. After all, the ones who attacked the three-world island this time were Yuan Du and He Yun. Both of them were dead. From now on, the Purple Jade beast cultivators would never have a foothold in the Wanxiang Sea. Therefore, even if they returned the resources, it would only be a small portion. Using this to win people's hearts was undoubtedly a good deal. Just this alone would directly show the benevolence and tolerance of the three-world island. It would reduce the rejection and backlash of the entire Wanxiang Sea. There was also another matter. The ownership of the Wanxiang Island and the Purple Jade Island, the two top spiritual islands. The Purple Jade beast cultivators had fled and the Wanxiang Rizhao had also left the Wanxiang Sea. These two top spiritual islands were destined to fall into the hands of the three-world island in the future. A single force controlling three top spiritual islands was something that had never happened in the history of the Wanxiang Sea. It could be said that after the previous battle, the three-world island had profited greatly, both in terms of reputation and actual benefits. The three-world island ate the meat while the other spiritual islands drank the soup. Moreover, it was the soup that originally belonged to them. Only by doing this could the Wanxiang Sea have a better future. End of chapter. Chapter 2001. For a special place like the Wanxiang Sea, it was not a good thing for a single power to dominate it. In the past, the Wanxiang Sea had the characteristic of being able to accommodate hundreds of people, which led to its prosperity and prosperity. The various top factions had noticed this, which was why they allowed their own galaxies to control the Wanxiang Sea. This was because every faction needed a place like this to exchange resources and information with other factions. Now that the Wanxiang Sea had changed owners, as long as the three-world island did not interfere with the interests of other factions and maintain the previous status quo, there would not be much resistance. The inventory of resources was not difficult, and Tang Jun was in charge of this. He took the thousands of storage rings away. Lu Yi then looked at Wan Xiao. Has any Rizhao arrived recently? Judging by the time, the Rizhao of the various factions should have arrived at the Wanxiang Ocean by now. With the path of insects, the information would not be so limited. According to the instructions he had left behind, if a Rizhao were to arrive, they would have to report to the Three-World Island first. However, in reality he did not sense any Rizhao's aura arriving at the Three-World Island. Wan Xiao said, "I did sense many Rizhao's aura recently, but these people did not enter the Wanxiang Sea. They only stayed outside the Wanxiang Sea." Lu Ye's eyes flashed as if he had sensed something. It seemed like it would not be easy for the Three-World Island to control the Wanxiang Sea completely. This could be seen from the Rizhao's attitude. They had received news from their own factions, and now that they had arrived at the Wanxiang Galaxy, they did not enter the Wanxiang Sea and only stayed outside. They were obviously waiting to see what would happen. They wanted to see if the Three-World Island had the ability to control the vast Wanxiang Sea. They did not enter because they did not want to offend the Three-World Island. Once they entered the Wanxiang Sea, they would only have one choice, which was to acknowledge the Three-World Island's authority and report to the Three-World Island. Otherwise they would be breaking the rules set by Lu Yi. So what were they waiting for? Were they waiting for the transfer of resources tomorrow? Lu Yi didn't think so. The total amount of resources that had been looted from the various spiritual islands was indeed huge. However, it wasn't a lot when it was distributed among the spiritual islands. Especially for Ri Guang, even if those resources were lost, it wouldn't be a big deal. There was no need for them to wait for such a small amount of resources. Lu Yi did not think too much about it. To the Three-World Island, controlling the 10,000 Elephant Sea was already a foregone conclusion. Anyone who tried to interfere was an enemy. As the saying went, counter soldiers with arms and water with an earth weir. He waved his hand, gesturing for Luan Xiao to return to her work. Then he got up and walked into the spirit jade vein. Soon they arrived at the depths. A figure was sitting cross-legged there, quietly recuperating. It was Ma Bin. Compared to 10 days ago, his condition didn't seem much better. Only his aura was slightly more stable. Sensing Lu Ye's arrival, Ma Bin slowly opened his eyes. What's the matter? If there wasn't anything important, Lu Yi definitely wouldn't disturb him at this juncture. Looking at this junior of 9 provinces, Ma Bin had a complicated expression on his face. Previously, when his Dao foundation was damaged, he had already accepted his fate. With his reputation, it was impossible for him to find a spirit jade mine that could be used to heal his injuries. However, Lu Yi had given him a glimmer of hope, which was why he had come. He didn't expect to encounter such a situation. During the chaotic battle, he had chased He Yun for hundreds of millions of miles and killed him at the entrance of the insect path. However, it was also because of this that he missed the various changes that followed. When he returned, Lu Yi had somehow advanced to the sunshine level and was threatening the Formless Palace. After that, the Formless Palace had no choice but to retreat, and the 6 sunshine level cultivators of the 10,000 Elephant Sea had also fled. It was hard to imagine that a newly advanced sunshine level cultivator could do such a thing. Even Chao Nian from 10,000 years ago paled in comparison to the current Lu Yi. At the very least, Chao Nian did not have such courage and means when he had just advanced to the sunshine level. "Senior, what's the background of the Formless Palace?" Lu Yi sat in front of Ma Bin and asked. He had come here mainly to ask about the Formless Palace. He had never heard of this force before, but with just one encounter, he could feel the strength of the other party. 11 sunshine-level cultivators had been dispatched at once, and this did not include the 2 who had chased after Yaya at the beginning. In this confrontation they had formed a deadly feud. The enemy was in the dark and he was in the light. Lu Yi of course had to find out more about the other party. The Formless Palace. Ma Bin murmured. It's indeed an unknown force, or rather, it's not known by ordinary people. In the following period of time, with Ma Bin's explanation, Lu Yi gradually learned about the Formless Palace. There was a vast area in the starry sky, empty and deathly silent, and filled with all kinds of magnificent wonders. It was extremely dangerous, and even Sunshine could not guarantee his own safety if he went in there. This vast area, if really calculated, was about the size of hundreds of 10,000 elephant galaxies. This was the most barren place in the starry sky. There were no living creatures and there was no decent boundary. It was even more barren than the remote Jade Conch galaxy. Although the Jade Conch galaxy was remote, it was still a galaxy with 3 large realms, and there were also other small realms. The area where the Formless Palace was located was really barren. In that part of the starry sky, even spiritual jades were rarely produced. However, in the center of such a place, there was only one top boundary, and it was the Formless Star. If there were no accidents, people would not be able to discover the formless star because there were many wonders in the starry sky, and there were too many dangers. Until one day an expert walked out of the formless star. He had an evil temperament and his methods were cruel. Moreover, he came from a place like the formless star, and his style of doing things was even more unscrupulous. Naturally, he provoked many enemies. However, he was strong enough, so although he had many enemies, he could always win every time he fought. As the number of enemies grew, his reputation grew. Gradually, a group of lawless people gathered around him and they committed crimes everywhere. The predecessor of the Formless Palace was actually a group of galactic pirates, but they were a group of very strong galactic pirates. Mabin explained slowly. As their danger grew, they finally attracted the attention of those top forces, and a siege was inevitable. In that battle, the Formless Palace suffered heavy losses, and there were even rumors that the expert from the Formless Star was killed. Since then, this powerhouse had disappeared for a period of time. However, a few decades later he appeared again and his strength became stronger than before. The danger was even greater, and the reputation of the Formless Palace gradually spread. Subsequently, it continued to attract some villains or criminals who had committed crimes and had nowhere to go to seek refuge. After so many years of development, the Formless Palace now gathered many experts from various races. They hid in the Formless Star and it was difficult for outsiders to come in contact with them. Even if there were big forces who wanted to join forces to besiege them, it was difficult to find the specific location of the Formless Star in that vast and barren land. Once, the Yellow Dragon Domain took the lead in launching an encirclement operation. In the end, while they were still halfway there, they suffered heavy losses due to the explosion of an unstable starry sky wonder, and had to return home. Since then, the Formless Palace became even more arrogant. After listening to Ma Bin's explanation, Lu Yi thought for a while and realized that the Formless Palace's sunshine was indeed complicated. He saw the Human Clan, Shadow Clan, Bone Clan, Demon Clan, Devil Clan. It was simply a place to hide evil. Because it is extremely difficult to even nurture spirit jades in that starry sky, the Formless Palace often goes out to plunder. This time, for some reason, they targeted the Wanxiang Sea. Lu Yi knew why they targeted the Wanxiang Sea. It was just a coincidence. Senior, what's the matter with the Formless Palace's ultra-long-distance transmission? If it's as you said, didn't those people directly teleport from the Formless Star to the Wanxiang Sea? Can such a long-distance transmission be achieved? This was the point that Lu Yi did not understand the most. Just the starry sky where the Formless Star was located was the size of hundreds of Wanxiang galaxies, and the Formless Star was far away from the Wanxiang Sea. What kind of method could directly connect the two distant places together? I don't know how they did it. I only know that there is a treasure in the Formless Palace. Every time they go out to plunder, they use the power of this treasure to teleport back and forth. A treasure of the treasure. Lu Ye's expression changed slightly. He suddenly remembered the filthy race he had encountered before. The filthy race controlled a treasure called the Heavenly Frost Mirror, which could release heavenly frost chi anywhere in the starry sky and then freeze and shatter space to form a worm path that could be used to pass through. The Formless Palace's method of transmission was obviously similar to the filthy race's method of opening the worm path, but the two methods were not the same. One was opening the worm path while the other was transmission. Therefore, the treasure of the Formless Palace should not be the Heavenly Frost Mirror's treasure. He then thought of another question. Senior, do all treasures have their own treasures? So far, he had only come into contact with a few treasures, but whether it was the Vine of Good Fortune he saw in the Alpha Origin stage, the Constellation Palace, or the Azura Field, they all had their own treasures. Moreover, the power of the treasures to a large extent continued the power of the treasures themselves. Furthermore, his Dice of Fate was also a rare treasure. This was undoubtedly a very strange thing. Why did treasures have their own treasures? It was rumored that treasures were born together with the starry sky, and some were derived from the wonders of the starry sky. Then how were treasures born? Treasures were not living creatures and there was no way to raise them. Basically, all treasures have their own treasures, of course there are exceptions. Ma Bin nodded. You were not strong enough before, so you didn't come into contact with many treasures, but now you are a sunshine expert. You may encounter all kinds of treasures in the future. You have to remember there are many attributes of treasures, but the power displayed by murderous-type treasures cannot be resisted by ordinary sunshine experts. The power of a treasure can only be offset by other treasures. You can think of it this way: once the power of most treasures is fully activated, it is the work of a sunshine expert. Chapter 2002. When a treasure's power was activated, it was almost equivalent to an extreme sunshine realm expert. And the power of a treasure could only be offset by other treasures. Ma Bin's words reminded him of the battle between Yuan Se and Shang Qingyue. One of them had summoned the fire gourd, while the other had summoned the Merak sword Qi. That level of battle was indeed not something ordinary people could compare to. Are there many treasures? Lu Yi asked. He alone had come into contact with many treasures. One could imagine how many treasures there were in the universe. Ma Bin thought for a moment and said, there are quite a lot of attribute treasures, but most of them are used as realm-suppressing artifacts. They won't be used easily. After all, these attribute treasures are related to the stability of a realm or even an entire galaxy. When they aren't used, they are the most powerful deterrent. Lu Yi understood. If the Formless Palace had not caused such a ruckus, Yuan Se would not have brought the fire gourd along. Initially, he thought that the fire gourd would be able to resolve the crisis easily. Who knew that Shang Qingyue was prepared and had a Merak sword aura to protect him? Speaking of the Merak sword Qi, Lu Yi felt a sense of familiarity when he saw it, as if he had seen it somewhere before. It was only now that he suddenly remembered something. It was not long after he had ascended to the constellation realm and left the 9 states to explore the universe for the first time. He had met an expert called Feng Rumo in the universe. This guy was chased by a sword light and fled in panic. This person asked Lu Yi for something to eat and drink. Later, under his guidance, Lu Yi encountered the Spectre ship and met Haitang. The Merak sword Qi that Shang Qingyue summoned gave Lu Yi a feeling that it was similar to the sword light that chased after Feng Rumo. At that time he was not strong enough and could not see through Feng Rumo's strength. Now that he thought about it, Feng Rumo must be someone on the same level as Ma Bin. Such an expert was being chased by a sword light. Could it be the Merak sword? But after thinking about it carefully, it was not right. If it was a treasure, Feng Rumo would not be able to resist it. But if that golden light was the Merak sword Qi, it was too strong. Lu Yi could not figure it out. The only thing he was sure of was that the sword Qi that chased after Feng Rumo was related to the Merak sword. He wondered how the expert he had met by chance back then was doing now. Lu Yi then asked about the Saint of the Formless Palace. Unfortunately, although Ma Bin knew about the Formless Palace, he did not know much about it. Therefore, he did not know much about the Saint of the Formless Palace. Now that Yaya was on the run, Lu Yi didn't even know where to find her. But since she had chosen to unseal her strength and memories, she should have a way to deal with it. One day later, the three-world island was bustling with activity. Many island masters of the spiritual islands gathered on the three-world island. Under Tang Jun's leadership, the transfer of resources officially began. As for how much resources each spiritual island had lost and what they had lost, it was all calculated by themselves. Of course, there would be some people who would take the opportunity to exaggerate and take advantage of the situation. However, the three-world island did not have the means to verify this. Furthermore, Tang Jun had already expected this and did not care too much about it. As long as it was not too excessive, he would turn a blind eye to it. This was because the harvest this time was simply too great. The entire Vientiane Trade Union and Violet Jade Island's resources had all been given to the three-world island. In a grateful atmosphere, the transfer of resources was carried out smoothly. The island masters of the spiritual islands were not stingy with their praises. Tang Jun responded with a smile. Although they were grateful that the three-world island had returned the looted resources, no matter which spiritual island it was, they merely expressed their gratitude. No one would easily acknowledge the three-world island's rule over the Vientiane Sea. At this time in Lu Ye's attic he was sitting opposite Tao Wu. Just 2 hours ago Tao Wu came uninvited. He had a good relationship with Lu Yi. Even though Lu Yi had advanced to Rizhao, they did not feel unfamiliar with each other. Tao Wu came to look for him at this time. Naturally it was not as simple as just visiting. The old man said that the major forces were willing to let the Vientiane galaxy rule over the Vientiane Sea mainly because the Vientiane Sea is located in this galaxy. The Vientiane galaxy has a natural advantage and its overall strength is not bad. Therefore, for so many years, everyone was willing to abide by the rules of the Vientiane Sea. If the major forces really wanted to get their hands on a treasure land like the Vientiane Sea, would the local galaxy be able to stop them? There was a high chance that they would not. However, if everyone wanted to get their hands on the Vientiane Sea, it would definitely be a chaotic battle in the end. No one would be able to gain an advantage. It was because of this mutual restraint that no one could stand out. The local galaxy had a natural advantage and their overall strength was not bad. It was natural for them to rule over the Vientiane Sea. The old man he mentioned was a veteran from the five-color domain Rizhao Ri. After the incident at the Vientiane Sea, he rushed over immediately. However, like Rizhao Ri from the other galaxies, this elite from the five-color domain did not enter the Vientiane Sea. Instead, he stayed outside. Now that the three-world island wants to take over the Vientiane Sea, they have to show that they have enough strength to deter others from coveting it, Tao Wu said. Obviously, he did not say this, but conveyed the message of Rizhao Ri from the five-color domain. This was undoubtedly a kind of guidance. No matter what, the relationship between the three-world island and the five-color island was obvious. Was the previous battle not enough? Lu Yi asked. First, they had forced the Formless Palace to retreat. Then they had defeated Rizhao Ri from the Vientiane Galaxy. In that battle, 7 Rizhao Ri had died. This kind of deterrence was not enough. Tao Wu said helplessly, after all, that battle did not happen right under their noses. To them, everything is just hearsay. Also, to be honest, the current foundation of the three-world island is a little weak. The number of Rizhao Ri that the three-world island had shown to the outside world was only 4. Moreover, whether it was Lu Yi, Luan Xiao, or Yen Miao, they had all just become Rizhao Ri not long ago. Ma Bin had been famous for a long time, but it was no secret that he was heavily injured. At this stage it was difficult for him to be a deterrent. Of course, the reputation of the Golden Light-type treasure had spread far and wide. Everyone knew that the three-world island had a strange Golden Light-type treasure that could seal off sunlight. But for those top realms who didn't have a Golden Light-type treasure, without a treasure, the three-world island was nothing in the eyes of the top forces. A heavily injured Ma Bin was not enough to hold up the fort. Lu Yi understood. So they want to see the foundation of the three-world island with their own eyes? Tao Wu nodded. That's the gist of it. If the three-world island could display a strong enough foundation, it would not be difficult for them to control the Wanxiang Sea. However, if they couldn't, then there would definitely be changes. What do they want to see? Lu Yi asked. I don't know. Tao Wu shrugged. But the old man said that we should be able to see the results soon. While the two were talking, Lu Yi suddenly turned his head and looked in a certain direction. So that's how it is. He had sensed that Rizhao Ri's aura had entered the Wanxiang Sea. However, judging from the other party's route, he was not coming to the three-world island. He was going somewhere else. This was a blatant provocation. At the same time, Tao Wu had obviously received the message. He quickly checked the sound talisman and looked up at Lu Yi. Shen Yun of the winged sky planet, Peak Rizhao Ri. He has the heavenly Luo umbrella and is invulnerable. The old man said that he and Gu Shi of the Tianyan field became sworn brothers when they were young. He is not here with good intentions. Lu Ye's interest was piqued. Heavenly Luo umbrella? The winged sky planet was also a top realm. Shen Yun came from the winged sky planet and was a Peak Rizhao Ri cultivator. With a treasure like the heavenly Luo umbrella, there was no place he could not go in this vast galaxy. Furthermore, the heavenly Luo umbrella sounded like it was used for defense. No wonder he dared to enter the Wanxiang Sea so openly. He obviously had something to rely on. He and the dead Gu Shi were sworn brothers when they were young. It was no secret that Gu Shi died at Lu Ye's hands. Although no one saw the process, Lu Yi could kill 2 Rizhao Ri from the Formless Palace. What was killing Gu Shi? Not only Gu Shi but Yuan Du and Qin Xuanba's deaths were also related to him. Many Rizhao Ri knew this. I'm going out. Lu Yi stood up. Be careful. Tao Wu could not help but be a little worried. Although Lu Ye's performance in the previous battle was shocking, it was mostly because of the power of his attribute treasure. Now that God Cloud had come prepared, if Lu Ye's attribute treasure could not be used, with his newly ascended cultivation, he would definitely not be God Cloud's opponent. Once Lu Yi was defeated, it would be a joke for the three-world island to control the Wanxiang Sea. Lu Yi nodded and left the pavilion. He rushed into the sky, not bothering to hide his Rizhao Ri aura. At this moment, many pairs of eyes looked over from the periphery of the Wanxiang Sea. Spiritual wills flew back and forth. Obviously, they all knew that the time to decide the future of the Wanxiang Sea had come. Shen Yun was an old man with a malicious expression. Despite being a Peak Rizhao Ri cultivator, he still looked so old. It was obvious that he was too old. He had been famous for many years and had obtained the heavenly Luo umbrella by chance in his early years. Since then, no one in this world could threaten him. When the news of the Wanxiang Sea spread, he immediately realized that this was a good opportunity for the winged sky star to control the Wanxiang Sea. As for the three-world island, he did not care about them at all. There were different levels of treasures. It was not that he had not seen the power of other treasures, but he had never seen a treasure that could break through the protection of the heavenly Luo umbrella. He could feel that many Rizhao recultivators were watching from the periphery of the Wanxiang Sea, but it did not affect him. The Wanxiang Sea was currently in a masterless state. Naturally, he had to make the first move. Those people who claimed to be cautious and wise had actually missed a good opportunity. What a joke. Just as he was heading towards the Winged Sky Island, he suddenly felt a spiritual will land on him. Umph. God Cloud snorted coldly and turned his head to look in the direction where the spiritual sense came from. He could vaguely see a figure rushing towards him from that direction. This made him very unhappy because the other party's brazen act of using spiritual sense to investigate was a provocation to him. Lu Yi of the Three-World Island? Shen Yun immediately determined the other party's identity. At this time, only the Three-World Island would come looking for him. End of chapter. Chapter 2003. Sensing carefully, God Cloud realized that Lu Yi of the Three-World Island had just ascended to Rizhao, and his aura was not stable yet. In the eyes of ordinary cultivators, Rizhao was high and mighty, but in front of God Cloud, who was at the peak of Rizhao, a newly ascended Rizhao was nothing. The Wanxiang Sea was a land of treasures. No matter who occupied it, it would be of great help to their own development. It was not that no one had thought about it before, it was just that there was no suitable opportunity. However, with the invasion of the Formless Palace and the chaos in the Wanxiang Sea, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. God Cloud looked at Lu Yi, who was quickly approaching him, and a cold smile appeared on his face. Did he really think that those Rizhao who were fooling around outside did not come in because they were afraid of the treasures of the Three-World Island? If that was really the case, then the Three-World Island was too naive. As far as he knew, he was not the only Rizhao who came to the Wanxiang Sea with treasures. There were at least 4 of them. He also knew that some Rizhao had secretly reached an agreement to divide the Wanxiang Sea. When the balance that had been maintained for tens of thousands of years or even longer was broken, naturally many people would have their own ideas. However, because no one wanted to be the first to stand out, everyone stayed outside. Only he, Shen Yun, was not afraid at all, or rather he had enough confidence. He did not have any objections to dividing the 10,000 Elephant Sea, but since he was the one who stood out, he wanted the biggest piece of land and the most benefits. He knew that at this moment, all the Rizhao who came from outside were paying attention to what was happening here. If that was the case, God Cloud's eyes flashed fiercely, and a murderous look appeared on his face. Most of the treasures were precious and rare. Only a few were owned by a single cultivator. A golden light treasure like the one on the Three-World Island that could seal a Rizhao's cultivation had never appeared before. Even if its quality was not as good as the heavenly Luo umbrella, it was still a treasure. Who would not covet it? In fact, from the perspective of the Rizhao, the value of the treasure was even higher than the Wanxiang Sea. God Cloud had the heavenly Luo umbrella, but he did not mind having another treasure. With 2 great treasures, one for offense and one for defense, who in the universe could defeat him? He believed that he was not the only one who wanted to take the treasures of the Three-World Island. He had to end this quickly. His figure blurred, and he went straight towards Lu Yi, calling out, "Are you fellow Taoist Lu Yi of the Three-Realm Island?" Hearing his shout, Lu Yi did not respond. He only frowned and looked at God Cloud, who was quickly approaching him. After getting some information from Tao Wu, he thought that God Cloud was here to test his abilities and see if the Three-World Island was qualified to control the Wanxiang Sea. If that was the case, he only needed to defeat Shen Yun. Regardless of whether he and Gushi were sworn brothers or not, God Cloud came from a top domain like the Winged Sky Star. If it was not necessary, Lu Yi did not want to become enemies with him. Hence, his original plan was to come over and greet God Cloud. After that, they would have a match and let the Rizhao people who were watching from the outside witness the power of the treasure money's golden light. But now, God Cloud shouted from afar. He seemed to be very enthusiastic, but Lu Yi was sharp enough to detect a trace of killing intent. "This old bastard wants to kill me." After realizing this, Lu Ye's expression suddenly turned cold and boundless killing intent grew in his heart. "If you want to kill me, then I'll kill you first." "That's right," Lu Yi shouted. He did not slow down. The 2 figures tacitly approached each other, their powers surging. In the next moment, God Cloud shouted, "Junior, you're too arrogant. How dare you kill my sworn brother, Gushi? Today I'll take your life and let you know that there's always someone better than you." As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand and a small pitch-black umbrella appeared. The small umbrella spun above his head and disappeared in a flash, leaving behind layers of light to protect his body. Before he came, he had clearly investigated the golden light treasure. He knew that once the golden light was activated, it would be hard to defend against it. Hence, he did not hesitate to use his Tianluo umbrella to protect his body and ensure that he was in an invincible position. The only thing that could fight against a treasure was a treasure. Although he was at the peak of the Rizhao realm, he would not joke around with his life, especially after revealing his evil intentions. Almost at the same time he used his Tianluo umbrella, he saw a golden light appear beside Lu Yi. Looking over, he immediately saw that the source of the golden light came from a strange toad-like beast on Lu Ye's shoulder. He understood in his heart that it was indeed as the information he had obtained indicated. The true form of the golden light attribute treasure was a living creature. Although it was a little strange, all treasures existed in different forms, so there was nothing strange about living creatures. The golden light bloomed and turned into a ray of light that shot towards God Cloud. God Cloud was already prepared. His body moved continuously in an attempt to dodge. However, no matter what he did, it was useless. The golden light still hid his body. Was it a characteristic that could not be avoided once it was locked on? God Cloud could not help but raise his eyebrows. He had never seen such a treasure before. However, if this treasure had such a characteristic, then its value would undoubtedly be even greater. When the golden light covered his body, God Cloud was still calm. He did not think that there was any treasure in this world that could break through the protection of his Tianluo umbrella. In the past he had fought many people who had treasures. However, under the protection of his Tianluo umbrella, he was always safe and sound. However, in the next moment his expression changed. Originally, under the protection of the heavenly Luo umbrella, there were layers of multicolored light flowing on the surface of his body. However, at this moment the flowing multicolored light was rapidly solidifying, and the color of the multicolored light was rapidly transforming into a golden light. In the blink of an eye, his body was covered by the golden light. As the golden light flowed, the mark of an ancient coin could be seen. Kacha. The sound of something breaking could be heard. God Cloud was shocked. This was because the thing that broke was the protection of his Tianluo umbrella. This was something that had never happened before. In his shock, he instinctively wanted to escape. However, something even more shocking happened. His peak Sunshine Realm mana and blood were all solidified. He finally knew what happened to the Sunshine Realm cultivators who were killed by Lu Yi of the Three-World Island. His heart trembled. A thought that made his hair stand on end rose in his heart. That golden light was not the power of a treasure. Was a treasure. A true starry sky treasure. Because only the power of a treasure could break through the protection of his Tianluo umbrella so easily. No other treasure could have such power. How could it be a treasure? God Cloud's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. He could not understand how there could be someone in this world who could control the power of a treasure. Furthermore, in this day and age there was still someone who could obtain a treasure. Rumors were harmful. All the information that he received all indicated that Lu Yi of the Three-World Island was in control of a treasure. Therefore he came with full confidence. He originally thought that it was a good opportunity to seize the Wanxiang Sea and steal the treasure. Who would have thought that this would happen? As his body fell downwards, the deep seawater entered his vision. Xinyun's heart was filled with fear. Of course, he knew about the terrifying corrosion of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Now that the protection of the heavenly Luo umbrella had been broken, once he fell into the sea, he would definitely die. Suddenly his scalp tightened. His falling body stopped in mid-air. He calmed himself down and realized that someone was grabbing his hair. The person who was grabbing him was undoubtedly Lu Yi. At such a close distance their eyes met. God Cloud could clearly see the undisguised murderous intent in Lu Ye's eyes. At this moment, the person standing in front of him was not a person, but a ferocious beast that was about to devour him. Under his survival instincts, the power of his soul surged and he activated his secret technique. Lu Ye's body swayed slightly. He shook his head vigorously. His soul was unstable, but it was not a big deal. God Cloud was dumbfounded. His soul power was at the peak of the Sunshine Realm. When he was in danger, even cultivators of the same level would not dare to underestimate him. How could a newly ascended Sunshine Realm cultivator withstand it? 1-2. Lu Yi opened his mouth. His eyelids drooped slightly. His expression was extremely sinister. At the same time, his other hand slowly pulled out the Pan Shan blade. Why did you all come? Under God Cloud's fearful gaze, the Pan Shan blade pierced his chest. He wanted to beg for mercy, but he could not open his mouth. You forced me. The long blade pierced through his body. His blood circulation was sealed. With the strength of his physical body, God Cloud could not withstand the sharpness of the Panshan blade. God Cloud felt a piercing pain. Blood flowed out of his mouth and nose. What made him even more fearful was that Lu Ye's body was trembling slightly, as if he was trying his best to suppress something. Under that ferocious expression, there was an explosion of extreme malice. Die! Lu Ye roared angrily. His mana surged and God Cloud's body, which was pierced by the long blade, exploded. He did not dare to delay any longer. He was afraid that he would not be able to resist the urge to devour God Cloud. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. A peak-level Sunshine Realm cultivator had died without a trace. Only a few storage rings that he carried with him were scattered all over the place. Among the storage rings there was a small, palm-sized black umbrella. Lu Yi suddenly regained his senses. He reached out his hand and grabbed the storage rings and the small black umbrella. He did not have the time to check carefully. He looked around coldly. Using his mana, his voice spread in all directions. The three-world island wants to control the Wanxiang Sea. Does anyone have any objections? Come out and speak. There was no response. After waiting for 10 breaths, Lu Ye's voice rang out again. Since no one has any objections, then follow the rules obediently. Whoever dares to cause trouble in the Wanxiang Sea will be killed by the three-world island. With a cold snort, he turned around and returned to the three-world island. He slowly calmed down the killing intent in his heart. When he left the three-world island, he did not want to kill God Cloud. He thought that it was just a test from the various factions. Therefore he only wanted to have a simple battle. However, he did not want to kill anyone. He could not stop others from wanting to kill him. Since that was the case, he could only kill them. He believed that after this battle, no one would dare to cause trouble in the Wanxiang Sea. End of chapter. Chapter 2004. The battle between the Sunshine experts started suddenly and ended quickly. The price to pay was the silent death of a peak Sunshine expert. Outside the Wanxiang Sea, many figures stood there with different expressions. Some were frowning, some were surprised, some were gloating, and some were shocked. Many Sunshine experts came from different galaxies and realms. They gathered here and did not enter the Wanxiang Sea because they did not want to have any conflict with the three-world island. They were also waiting. In such a situation, there would definitely be people who would not be able to hold themselves back and test the waters. They were all Sunshine experts who had been famous for many years. They had patience and shrewdness. The three-world island had declared that they wanted to control the Wanxiang Sea. However, how could such a huge matter be decided by one person? Anyone who wanted to control such a precious land would have to get their approval. If the three-world island was a top realm, it would be fine. However, the three-world island was not. Furthermore, they did not have a strong foundation. Under such circumstances, even if the three-world island wanted to take control of the Wanxiang Sea with their strength from the previous battle, they would have to pay a huge price. It could even be said that they might not even be able to take control of the Wanxiang Sea under the current circumstances. Just as they expected, someone had entered the Wanxiang Sea. Furthermore, it was God Cloud from the Winged Sky Star. God Cloud relied on the protection of the heavenly Luo umbrella and was used to being lawless. In the entire galaxy, he had a fierce reputation and was one of the most dangerous people in the world to provoke. This was because once someone fought with him, if they could not break through his protection, he would be in an invincible position. Such an expert had come to the Wanxiang Sea but did not report to the three-world island. Everyone was looking forward to what would happen next. They had sensed that Lu Yi had made his move, and had also sensed the conflict between God Cloud and Lu Yi as they had wished. However, the result was shocking. In just one exchange, God Cloud's aura was destroyed. Following that, Lu Ye's voice resounded throughout the Wanxiang Sea. Because it was too far away, no one could see the details of the fight between Lu Yi and God Cloud. They only knew one thing: God Cloud was dead. He died at the hands of the newly promoted Sunshine expert, Lu Yi of the Three-World Island. After a moment of silence, spiritual wills suddenly surged. Could it be that God Cloud did not manage to use the heavenly Luo umbrella in time? Someone asked in bewilderment, because this was the only possibility that could explain why Xin Yun had fallen so quickly. No, God Cloud is such a sly old fox. He has always been cautious. Facing an opponent who also has a spiritual treasure, it is impossible for him not to use the Tian Luo umbrella. That's right. Moreover, it was God Cloud who initiated the fight just now. Based on my understanding of him, he must have used the Tian Luo umbrella to protect himself. But with the protection of the Tian Luo umbrella, how could he still die? How could that golden light-type treasure be so powerful? Which supreme treasure does this belong to? No matter which treasure it is, its power has already reached an unfathomable level. Lu Yi of the Three-World Island will definitely become famous in the starry sky after today. No one will dare to underestimate him anymore. However, this brat is too hot-tempered. God Cloud actually killed him just like that. Did he not think that he would offend the Winged Sky Star because of this? Has he not offended enough top forces? Zixin has a huge grudge against him. Previously he even killed a few Rizhao from the Formless Palace. Moreover, since he dared to take in the Green Demon King Ma Bin, it undoubtedly shows that he is not someone who is afraid of trouble. That's true. Ma Bin's scary part is that he appears and disappears unpredictably. Now that he is severely injured and has appeared in the Three-World Island, I'm afraid that many people will come looking for trouble with him. Other things aside, the Wanxiang Galaxy itself will not let him off easily. That brother Chang Feng has been tracking his whereabouts ever since the battle at the Azura field. I think he will return in a few days. A group of Rizhao's spiritual wills conversed. Suddenly someone said, "Everyone, have you not thought of a possibility?" Everyone looked towards the source of the voice. Someone asked curiously, "What possibility?" To be able to break the Tianluo umbrella's spiritual treasure protection so easily, the essence of the golden light in the Three-World Island, is it really a spiritual treasure? If it is not a spiritual treasure, what else can it be? The person who spoke had a leisurely expression and a deep gaze. Many Rizhao immediately reacted and inhaled a breath of cold air. That's right, everyone had assumed that the essence of the golden light was the power of a spiritual treasure. However, if it was a spiritual treasure, then it should not have been able to break the Tianluo umbrella so easily. However, if it was a spiritual treasure, then it was too shocking. After a long period of silence, someone finally spoke. The battle of the 10,000 Elephant Sea has come to an end. It's time for us to visit the owner of the Three-World Island. As for whether the golden light is a treasure or, perhaps we can ask him face to face. Although it was inappropriate to do so, if this matter was not clarified, none of the Rizhao present would be able to feel at ease. On the Three-World Island, Lu Yi returned. He adjusted his breathing for a while and suppressed the chaotic emotions in his heart. He had to quickly think of a way to deal with the black fruit on the talent tree. Otherwise it would easily affect him in future battles, just like this time when he fought against Shen Yun. Fortunately he already had some ideas. Just as he was about to give it a try, he suddenly raised his head and looked in a certain direction. With a thought, he transmitted his voice and stood up. After a short while, Lu Yi stood in the air outside the Three-World Island. Wan Xiaoa and Yen Miao followed closely behind him. From afar, a stream of light was rapidly approaching them. The power of the Rizhao filled the air. Wan Xiaoa and Yen Miao's expressions were a little nervous. This was because the number of Rizhao who came this time was quite large. There were about 10 of them. Obviously, they were all from the forces behind the various spiritual islands. Moreover, many of the Rizhao's aura was extremely profound. It was obvious that they were not ordinary people. They secretly looked at Lu Yi and realized that his expression was normal. He had the attitude of a host and was calm and collected. The two ladies were affected by his calmness. They looked at each other and gradually calmed down. Sui Lin from the Five-Color Territory is here to visit. Please forgive us if we have disturbed you. Before the person arrived, a clear voice could be heard from afar. It was the old man that Ding Dang mentioned. The old man was not old. He was full of energy. His vigorous aura showed that he was not a mediocre person in the Rizhao. As the only force behind the Five-Color Island that had a good relationship with the Three-World Island, Sui Lin taking the lead to speak was undoubtedly a good start for the meeting with the Rizhao. Following his words, voices could be heard one after another. 10,000 Devil Su Lan is here to visit. Northern Underworld Kue Hua is here to visit. Yellow Dragon Territories Gu Tai. One by one the Rizhaos introduced themselves. They were all well-known names in the starry sky. Especially the first few Rizhao who came from the top realms, they were especially important. Other than the Rizhao who came from the top forces, the Rizhao who introduced themselves were also existences that could not be underestimated. Behind each of them there was a strong force. If it was on a normal day, these experts and ordinary cultivators would not be able to see them. However, today they appeared in groups as if they were free. Lu Yi was humble and polite. He returned their greetings one by one and carefully memorized their faces and names. Now that he was in the Rizhao level, he would be dealing with this group of people in the future. Many of the Rizhaos secretly observed him. Seeing that he responded well, they could not help but secretly nod their heads. You have all come from afar. Your presence brings light to the three-world island. Please come in. I have already ordered people to prepare a banquet to welcome you all. Well said, well said. After a short while, in a palace where the cultivators of the three-world island were stationed, Lu Yi sat at the head of the table. Below him, the Rizhaos from the top forces were seated on either side of him. All kinds of spiritual fruits and wine were served one after another. Everyone was chatting and laughing. The scene was harmonious. Regardless of whether it was Lu Yi or the Rizhaos who came, they all knew one thing clearly. They were willing to visit the three-world island at this time as guests. This meant that they had acknowledged the three-world island's rule and jurisdiction over the Wanxiang Sea. Those who did not, such as Xin Yun, had already turned into ashes. Under the suppression of absolute power, all the Rizhaos understood that the three-world island had the ability and qualifications to oversee the Wanxiang Sea. Since that was the case, there was nothing to nitpick about. Perhaps some of them were unwilling, but with Xin Yun's example, they naturally would not show their faces at this time. Now that everyone was sitting here, there was only one thing to discuss, and that was their own interests in the future. It was undeniable that the Wanxiang Sea had existed for so many years and had brought great benefits to all the major forces present. Especially after occupying the spiritual island, the cultivators of their respective forces could stay in the spiritual island and improve their cultivation speed and efficiency. This would undoubtedly speed up the growth of the cultivators of their respective forces. Moreover, having such a place where they could trade with each other was a great benefit to any force. This was because every realm and galaxy had their own specialties. These specialties might not be worth much in their own realm, but to other realms and galaxies, they were very precious and rare items. Through such transactions, there was no doubt that they would gain a greater value. However, everyone was old and experienced, so no one brought up this topic at the beginning. They only made small talk. Gu Tai of the Yellow Dragon Realm took this opportunity to get closer to Lu Yi. This was because after the Azura field closed, Gu Sheng had returned to the Yellow Dragon Realm and mentioned Lu Ye's name to him. The friend that Gu Sheng mentioned, you must be my friend, right? Gu Tai asked with a smile. Lu Yi said, that's right. I did go to the Azura field before. I had a good chat with Gu Sheng there. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Gu Tai sighed. In the current Yellow Dragon Realm, Gu Sheng was undoubtedly the one with the strongest aptitude. However, even Gu Sheng was now in seclusion. It was still uncertain whether he could successfully advance to the Sunshine level. Looking at Lu Yi, not only had he advanced to the Sunshine level, he had also caused such a big incident. Today he was sitting here as if they were equals. In comparison, Gu Sheng, who the Yellow Dragon Realm had high hopes for, was obviously inferior. How is Gu Sheng now? Lu Yi asked. He felt a little guilty towards Gu Sheng and Abdullah. This was because the three of them had agreed to explore the secret of the Azura field in a scene. In the end, he was taken away by the Heavenly Azura tribe. After that, it was not convenient for him to continue contacting the two of them. They did not meet again until the Azura field closed. End of chapter. Chapter 2005. After returning from the Azura field, Gu Sheng went into seclusion. Gu Tai smiled. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. That's something to look forward to. Gu Sheng, who had already reached the peak of the Moon Jade Realm, chose to go into seclusion for only one goal, to break through to the Sunshine Realm. Reaching the Sunshine Realm from the Moon Jade Realm was a huge hurdle. Since ancient times, many cultivators had failed and regretted it for the rest of their lives. However, Gu Sheng had a deep foundation, so the risk of breaking through to the Sunshine Realm would be much lower. As for Abdullah, if he could perfect his source and condense his own flower of qi, Lu Yi estimated that he would be able to break through to the Sunshine Realm like himself. In the main hall, the Sunshine Realm cultivators chatted with each other. The atmosphere was lively. After 3 rounds of wine, someone suddenly asked, Fellow Taoist Lu, now that the chaos in the Wanxiang Sea has been quelled, the three-world island wants to take control of this treasured land. May I ask how it will be managed in the future and what rules will be set? It was impossible for there to be no rules in such a place where cultivators from countless galaxies gathered. This person was undoubtedly asking about the three-world island's plans for the future. This was also related to their interests. As soon as he spoke, the hall fell silent. Everyone looked towards Lu Yi, waiting for his reply. Lu Yi knew that the critical moment had come. Although these people had come to visit politely and had a pleasant conversation with him just now, if he really wanted to achieve his goal, he still had to give them a satisfactory answer. Only then would he be able to calm them down. After looking around, Lu Yi said slowly, "The island has no intention of setting any complicated rules. After all, the Wanxiang Sea is a place where heroes gather. There are many people coming and going. If there are strict rules, it will be detrimental to future development. Moreover, the original rules of the Wanxiang Sea are reasonable. Therefore, I've decided to make some minor changes while maintaining the general situation." Sui Lin of the Five-Color Domain laughed. "Please enlighten us." Lu Yi thought for a moment and said, "Everyone knows that I climbed up step by step from the bottom, so I have some understanding of the original rules of the myriad phenomenon sea. Now, I'm going to change some of the unreasonable parts of the rules. If there's anything wrong, please point it out." His politeness made the Sunshine Realm cultivators feel good. They all sat down and listened quietly. From today onwards, the rule that each spiritual island can only have 5 Guardian Moon Jade realms is abolished. There will no longer be a limit to the number of Guardian Moon Jade realms. Everyone nodded when they heard this. Obviously, they felt that this change was reasonable. The original rules of the Wanxiang Sea were mostly set to prevent large-scale battles from causing too many deaths and injuries. This also made it easier for the Wanxiang Galaxy to manage. There were only 5 of them guarding the Yuyao. As such, if there was a conflict between the 2 great spiritual islands, it would at most be a battle between 10 Yuyao from each side. No matter how big of a commotion it caused, it wouldn't be too big of a commotion. However, ever since the twin Qi-connected branch formation disk began to circulate in the myriad phenomenon sea, this situation had changed. If a few constellations with sufficient foundations used the formation disk to form formations, the power they could unleash would not be inferior to an ordinary Yuyao. Which family didn't have a large number of constellations? Array disks were not expensive now. Therefore, in recent years, whenever a conflict broke out between 2 forces, it would be a fierce clash between all sorts of forces. Most of those forces would be seen as the newly ascended Yuyao. Other than the array disks, there were also battleships. Some of the larger battleships were much more powerful than the average Yuyao. Under such circumstances, merely limiting the number of guards guarding Yuyao was meaningless. Therefore, Lu Yi decided to abolish this rule. This way, the forces with powerful backgrounds could station a sufficient number of Yuyao on their own spiritual islands. The forces behind each of the Rizhao present belonged to this group. Therefore, this change was beneficial to them. Naturally, no one would object. Also, Lu Yi spoke again. Every top-tier spiritual island can send 1 Rizhao to guard their own spiritual island. When he said this, everyone was stunned. Then a small number of Rizhao were overjoyed. Gu Tai looked at Lu Yi with a burning gaze. "Do you mean what you say?" The change that Lu Yi had proposed earlier was not much. At most, it would allow the forces with a stronger foundation to better guard their own spiritual islands. However, this change was far more significant. For so many years, only the local Rizhao could remain on the myriad phenomenon sea for a long time. Other Rizhao from other places were not allowed to stay for too long. Many years ago, the various great forces had discussed this issue with the Rizhao of the myriad phenomenon galaxy. However, the myriad phenomenon galaxy was adamant. No matter what, they would not agree to allow Rizhao from other places to stay for a long time. If they were pushed too far, it would definitely lead to a bloody battle. Since the myriad phenomenon galaxy was adamant, the various great forces had no choice but to give up. The main reason why the myriad phenomenon galaxy was adamant about this rule was that they were not powerful enough. There were only about a dozen Rizhao in the local galaxy. There were also about a dozen top-tier spiritual islands on the myriad phenomenon sea, which were occupied by the various great forces. If every Rizhao came, how could the myriad phenomenon galaxy manage the myriad phenomenon sea? If these Rizhao from other places joined forces and conspired, the local galaxy would definitely be in trouble. As a precaution, the myriad phenomenon galaxy decided to block this possibility from the source. Therefore, no one expected Lu Yi to relent on this matter after taking over the myriad phenomenon sea. Moreover, he was the one who suggested it. For a moment, everyone felt that it was surreal. Lu Yi smiled. "How would I dare to speak nonsense in front of all of you?" He changed the topic and said leisurely, "As far as I know, the spirit jade mineral veins on the various top-tier spiritual islands are very beneficial to Rizhao's cultivation, right? Other things aside, the location of the spirit jade mineral veins had always been the place with the densest spirit qi on a spiritual island. Cultivating there would naturally yield twice the results with half the effort. Moreover, the benefits of the spirit jade mineral veins to Rizhao did not seem to be limited to this. There were other reasons that he had not come into contact with yet, and those were the most important. For example, Ma Bin's Dao Foundation needed to be healed in the spirit jade mineral veins. Jiao Yan's sudden visit to the spirit jade mineral veins on the three-world island was obviously not just to increase her cultivation speed. The spirit jade mineral veins were especially attractive to her. Every top-tier realm indeed had their own spirit jade mineral veins, but they had more than one Rizhao. Who would not want to have another spirit jade mineral vein? The myriad phenomenon sees top-tier spiritual islands undoubtedly gave them such an opportunity. In the past, the myriad phenomenon galaxy did not agree, but now Lu Yi had relented. Gu Tai looked at Lu Yi and his eyes flashed. Suppressing the surprise in his heart, he spoke first. Brother Lu, this is a great move. It is the fortune of the cultivation world that Brother Lu is in charge of the myriad phenomenon sea. From now on, Yellow Dragon Island will follow Brother Lu's lead on the myriad phenomenon sea. Although he had a good chat with Lu Yi and even took the initiative to use Gu Sheng's name to get closer to him, in reality, he had never made a clear statement about the three-world islands' intention to rule the myriad phenomenon sea. However, when Lu Yi mentioned that each top-tier spiritual island could send a Rizhao to oversee it, his attitude immediately changed. The first rule, which limited the number of Yu Yao's guardians, did not affect Yellow Dragon Island much. Whether it was abolished or not, Yellow Dragon Island was still Yellow Dragon Island. However, the second rule was completely different. Gu Tai himself could even benefit from it. This was the source of his great change in attitude. The five-color domain also supports Brother Lu's rule over the myriad phenomenon sea. Sui Lin quickly followed. Then came the myriad devil, netherworld, and other Rizhao from top-tier realms. Since these Rizhao had spoken, how could the other Rizhao from the larger realms hold back? They immediately chimed in. Instantly, the main hall was filled with noise. It was also from this moment onwards that the three-world island had officially confirmed their right to rule the myriad phenomenon sea. No one had any objections. Lu Yi raised his hand and gestured for everyone to calm down. Then he said, Rizhao can oversee a top-tier spiritual island. However, there is only one condition. Rizhao cannot participate in the disputes between the various spiritual islands. Does anyone have any objections to this? No. This is how it should be. Everyone quickly shook their heads. Of course, they did not have any objections. Moreover, this kind of thing was not very likely to happen. This was because although there were many disputes in the myriad phenomenon sea, most of them were caused by forces below the top-tier spiritual islands. Who would want to have any conflicts with a top-tier spiritual island? That was simply courting death. Hence, with Rizhao overseeing a top-tier spiritual island, it was basically impossible for them to be involved in any disputes. These are the only two rules that I want to change. Does anyone have anything else to add? Lu Yi asked. Gu Tai said, Brother, you've thought it through thoroughly. I have nothing else to add. The rest shook their heads to express that they had nothing to add. Lu Yi then nodded. If that's the case, other than these two rules, everything else remains unchanged. The various spiritual islands have suffered great losses this time. It's best for them to recover as soon as possible. Only then can they regain their former prosperity. I'll have to trouble all of you to help out with this. Since the myriad phenomenon sea was ruled by the three-world island, the more prosperous it was, the more benefits the three-world island would gain. Of course, he hoped that the various spiritual islands would recover as soon as possible. Many Rizhao nodded in agreement. Since Lu Yi did not mention this matter, they would not neglect it. After all, it was their own matter. Someone said, I'd like to thank Brother Lu for his benevolence and for returning the stolen goods. I'd like to thank you. As soon as he said that, another wave of grateful voices could be heard. Almost half of the forces present had been robbed by the Formless Palace, especially the top spiritual islands. They were the main targets of the Formless Palace. Lu Yi had made the decision to return the goods that had been robbed. This had undoubtedly reduced their losses. Lu Yi smiled. That's what I should do. As he spoke, a figure walked in from outside. It was Yuan Xiao. When she walked into the main hall, she instantly attracted everyone's attention. Yuan Xiao was a newly promoted Rizhao. She had never experienced such a scene before. Her body almost turned to jelly. Luckily, she had a strong will. Moreover, the Rizhao in the main hall did not have any ill intentions towards her. Hence, she did not make a fool of herself. End of chapter. Chapter 2006. It was not Yuan Xiao herself that attracted the attention of the Rizhao in the hall. Even if Yuan Xiao was beautiful, she was not that attractive. What the Rizhao were looking at was the golden pet beast in her arms. Lu Yi of the Three-World Island had a strange golden treasure in his hands. It was because of this treasure that he was able to kill so many people as a new Rizhao. He even forced the Formless Palace to leave behind the looted goods. As for that treasure, it was no ordinary treasure either. It was a living thing. Yet, for some unknown reason, it was able to unleash the might of a treasure. So when they saw this golden pet beast, the Rizhao could not take their eyes off it. This was because this beast matched the description of the information they received perfectly. This was the treasure? The group of Rizhao suddenly became serious and looked at it seriously. Gu Tai, Sui Lin, Kuehua, Su Lan and some of the other top realms Rizhao looked at each other with a strange expression. When they came to the Three-World Island, they had all kinds of suspicions about this treasure. After all, the power of this treasure was too exaggerated. Xin Yun, who had the Tianluo umbrella, died instantly. They could not help but wonder if this treasure was really a treasure. Originally, they wanted to find an opportunity to ask Lu Yi about this treasure. Who would have thought that before they could mention it, the Three-World Island would take the initiative to present it to them? What was the meaning of this? What's the matter? Lu Yi looked at Wan Xiao and asked. To be honest, there was some risk in letting Wan Xiao bring the Pai Xiu over in this kind of situation. But there were some methods that had to be used, so this was the only way. And he was sure that the aftermath of the previous battle was enough to serve as a deterrent, so the Rizhao present would not dare to have any ideas. Wan Xiao bowed to Lu Yi and reported according to his instructions. Island Master, Small Melon is a little irritable. It seems to be about to explode. After saying that, the corner of her eyes twitched. Small Melon, this name. Who gave it? Once she said that, the Rizhao present all changed their expressions. This treasure could kill Xin Yun instantly. What did it mean that it was about to explode? Although there were a few people among them who also brought treasures, none of them were confident that their treasures were stronger than the Tianluo umbrella's defense. If it suddenly exploded, who could block it? Gua. Small Melon's cheeks puffed up, and his two protruding eyes turned, as if he was staring in a direction. In that direction, several Rizhao immediately tensed up. Their mana surged as if they were facing a great enemy. Everyone, don't panic. Lu Yi hurriedly comforted them. He walked down from above and then took the Small Melon into his hands, gently stroking it. Gu. Small Melon's voice rang out once again, reverberating endlessly in the huge hall. Lu Yi seemed to be mumbling something, but no one could make out what he was saying. After a long while, Lu Yi smiled and said, I've frightened everyone. It's fine for the time being. Gu Tai's expression was solemn as he looked at Lu Yi and said, Fellow Taoist, this beast is Pai Xiu. Lu Yi casually explained, this beast has a trace of Pai Xiu's bloodline, but its bloodline is not pure. Originally, it would have been difficult for it to become a great weapon, but it encountered another opportunity. Everyone held their breaths and listened quietly. A few years ago, when I was traveling in the starry sky, I obtained a strange ancient coin. At first, I didn't find anything special about the ancient coin. Not long after, the ancient coin was eaten by this gluttonous little thing. Since then, this beast seemed to have undergone some wonderful changes. What changes? Although he already had some guesses, Gu Tai still wanted to understand. It's the same as it is now, and it can spit out a kind of golden light with a powerful sealing power. Lu Yi slowly said, I believe everyone knows about the fight between me and Rizhao from Formless Palace. I'm ashamed to say that I, a newly promoted Rizhao, was able to kill Formless Palace's people because of Small Melon's ability. Otherwise, how could I have such great ability? Although they already knew this information, when these things came out from Lu Ye's mouth, it still made them feel inexplicable. Among the many Rizhao present, which one of them didn't go through many years of bitter cultivation to reach this step, but their strength was really nothing in front of a powerful treasure. Lu Yi, on the other hand, had only inadvertently obtained an opportunity to have the ability to kill Rizhao like cutting melons and vegetables. Under this comparison, it really made people envious and jealous, and they couldn't help but sigh at the unfairness of the heavens. Is the ancient coin that fellow Taoist obtained a treasure? Someone asked. Whether it's a treasure or not, I don't know. Lu Yi shook his head. Everyone here is a knowledgeable person. Why don't you give me a pointer or two? Su Lan said with a solemn expression. Although a treasure is powerful, there are harsh conditions to activate any treasure. It either consumes a cultivator's foundation or requires a lot of time to prepare. Fellow Taoist Lu, may I ask what price you need to pay for this pet? This undoubtedly had the intention of inquiring about other people's details, but it was Lu Yi who brought up the topic, so although Su Lan's question was rude, there wasn't much of a problem. Moreover, looking at Lu Ye's expression, he didn't seem to mind. Price. Lu Ye blinked. There doesn't seem to be any price to pay, maybe? I need to go to the 10,000 Elephant Sea to take a bath? Go to the 10,000 Elephant Sea to take a bath. What does that mean? The group of people were all at a loss. Lu Ye didn't explain, but lowered his head to look at Small Melon and comforted it again. All right, I know, don't be upset. He raised his head to look at the crowd and said, Everyone, I'm sorry, Small Melon is a little unhappy, I'll take it to the 10,000 Elephant Sea to comfort it a little. As he said this, he directly walked out of the hall. The group of people looked at each other, and in the next moment, they all stood up and followed closely behind Lu Ye. They all faintly realized that what they were about to witness next might be extremely bizarre. Soon, a large group of people arrived at the edge of the three-world island. Under everyone's gaze, Lu Ye carried Small Melon and plunged into the 10,000 Elephant Sea. The whole place was silent, the corners of many people's eyes twitching at this moment, and their faces twitching. They quietly stared at the splashes on the surface of the sea, unable to return to their senses for a long time. Who didn't know about the terrifying corrosion of the 10,000 Elephant Sea's water? If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes today, they wouldn't have dared to believe that there was actually someone in this world who would take the initiative to jump into the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Lu Ye couldn't be courting death. Since he did so, it meant that he had the ability to resist the corrosion of the 10,000 Elephant Sea's water. What kind of sensational news was this? Moreover, according to the information they received, Lu Ye had done this before, but in the end, it was only hearsay, far less shocking than seeing it with their own eyes. Luan Xiaoa also followed, and many people secretly glanced at her, but they didn't see the slightest bit of worry on her face. The sea calmed down, and Lu Ye's whereabouts were nowhere to be seen. Even if the Rizhao people used their full strength to look, they couldn't see any trace of him. It wasn't until 10 breaths later that someone suddenly shouted, "He's back!" Everyone looked over, and sure enough, they saw a blurry shadow rapidly solidifying under the sea. The next moment, with a splash, Lu Ye appeared in front of everyone, holding Xiao Gua in her arms, safe and sound. Seawater splashed everywhere, and the few people who were closer to her quickly retreated, lest they be contaminated. Gua. Accompanied by a clear cry, a golden light suddenly shot out into the depths of the void, stretching for tens of thousands of miles. Feeling better now? Lu Ye patted Small Melon's head and leisurely flew back. On the shore, dozens of Rizhao people looked at him with complicated expressions. Lu Ye smiled. Just now, fellow Taoist Su Lan asked about the price of using Small Melon's ability. I carefully observed it and found that Small Melon seems to be able to swallow the water of the 10,000 Elephant Sea and store the huge amount of energy in its body. When needed, it can activate the sealing golden light. Su Lan was slightly startled. So, fellow Taoist's pet needs to swallow the water of the 10,000 Elephant Sea? That should be the case. Lu Ye nodded. Beside him, Guihua said sinisterly, fellow Taoist said that it can swallow the water and store it in its body. Then, how many times can it use the power of the treasure with the stored energy? Just by listening to his style of speaking, he gave off an extremely sinister feeling, but in fact he was like this. Whether he was familiar with or unfamiliar with himself, his style of speaking was like this, and it didn't represent his likes and dislikes. That I don't know. Lu Ye shook his head and looked at Guihua leisurely, but no matter how many times it can use it, it's easy to replenish it anyway. Guihua's eyes flashed. He had to admit that Lu Ye was right. The 10,000 Elephant Sea's water was so huge. If the price of using the treasure's power was the water of the 10,000 Elephant Sea, then it could be replenished easily. Just now, Lu Ye had only brought that pet beast into the sea for 10 breaths. Fellow Taoist, you can freely enter and leave the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Is that also related to it? Someone asked curiously. That's right. Lu Ye nodded. A few more people asked about the things they were curious about, and Lu Ye answered them one by one. Suddenly, Gu Tai said, fellow Taoist, may I ask if you used the heavenly Luo umbrella when you fought with Shen Yun? Not only him, but also all the Rizhao people who knew about the power of the heavenly Luo umbrella were curious about this. Heavenly Luo umbrella? Lu Ye blinked and flipped his hand, taking out a small black umbrella the size of a palm. You're talking about this? If that's the case, it seems to be broken. After killing Shen Yun, he kept this small black umbrella and investigated it. At that time he felt that this thing was broken. Just broken. Everyone was shocked and looked at Lu Ye's hand. Indeed, the small black umbrella had no spirituality, and it looked a little tattered. This was the famous heavenly Luo umbrella. How could it be broken? Gu Tai's expression was extremely serious. His lips trembled a few times, then he said, "Fellow Taoist, if you don't mind, can you let me check it?" "Go ahead." Lu Yi threw the tattered small black umbrella to Gu Tai like he was throwing away trash. Gu Tai caught it with both hands and used his divine sense to check it. He wasn't the only one looking. A few Rizhao seniors gathered around him and observed it carefully. But no matter how they looked, this should be the real heavenly Luo umbrella without a doubt. Even if it was broken and tattered, the aura of the treasure couldn't be faked. For a moment, everyone's hearts beat wildly. The heavenly Luo umbrella was one of the most famous defensive treasures in the universe. With this treasure, Xin Yun was invincible no matter who he was up against. This was why he was so famous. But now Xin Yun was dead and the heavenly Luo umbrella was broken. What kind of treasure in this world could break the heavenly Luo umbrella in an instant? For a moment, a horrifying and unbelievable thought surged in everyone's minds. End of chapter. Chapter 2007. Everyone thought that Lu Yi was in possession of an ultimate treasure. God Cloud must have thought so too. Hence, when he brought the heavenly Luo umbrella to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, he did not put the three-world island in his eyes. He also did not intend to listen to Lu Ye's words and report to the three-world island to register. Hence, God Cloud died and the heavenly Luo umbrella was broken. Only now did everyone realize that this was not an ultimate treasure. It was most likely a true starry sky treasure. It was a starry sky treasure. How could anyone control a starry sky treasure in such an era? Although the one controlling the starry sky treasure was the pet beast with the Pishio bloodline, what was the difference between its control and Lu Ye's? After devouring the strange ancient coin, no matter what the pet beast was originally, it was now a living starry sky treasure. Did Lu Yi not know the value of this treasure? Even if he was a newly promoted Rizhao, it was impossible for him not to know this. However, even if he knew, he still demonstrated the power and results of this treasure in front of everyone. He even brought the treasure into the Wanxiang Sea under the witness of many Rizhao. He only took 10 breaths to replenish the treasure's power. Everything he did was nothing more than to display the strength of the three-world island to deter the guests from all directions. Think about it, a treasure that could bring people in and out of the Wanxiang Sea and replenish its power by devouring the Wanxiang Sea's water. Who on the vast Wanxiang Sea could defeat it? Who would dare to go against it? With such a treasure in the three-world island, no matter which Rizhao or how many Rizhao dared to cause trouble in the Wanxiang Sea, they would not have a good ending. If Lu Yi wanted to, he could easily kill every Rizhao present as long as he had enough time. This had nothing to do with Lu Ye's cultivation. It was the power of the treasure. In an instant, the Rizhao understood the reason why Lu Yi did not hesitate to expose the secret of the treasure to show off in front of them. With such a treasure, the three-world island's rule over the Wanxiang Sea would be impregnable. From now on, no one would dare to cause trouble in the Wanxiang Sea. No matter how powerful a cultivator was, they would have to obey the rules unless they had the ability to fight against the treasure. Thinking of this, the Rizhao from the various top forces finally understood why Lu Yi did not mind them sending Rizhao to guard their own spiritual island. The Wanxiang Galaxy didn't dare to set this precedent because they didn't have the confidence to rule the Wanxiang Sea after setting this precedent. However, Lu Yi dared to do so because he didn't care how many people from outside were guarding his spiritual island. Whoever dared to break the rules would be killed by him. This was his strong confidence in his cardinal treasure. Many thoughts flashed through Gu Tai's mind as he returned the damaged heavenly Luo umbrella to Lu Yi. With this treasure guarding it, the myriad phenomenon sea is truly fortunate. I believe this treasured land will be much more peaceful in the future. After pondering for a moment, he continued, as for the ancient coin that fellow Taoist's pet beast swallowed, if I'm not mistaken, it should be called the 3-treasure fortune coin. 3 treasures Rui money? Lu Yi raised his eyebrows and asked for advice. Although this treasure coin had been swallowed by Small Melon and he could control it, if he could obtain more information he naturally wouldn't want to miss it. Gu Tai shook his head and said, there are too many things that I don't understand. I've only seen some records of this in an extremely ancient book in this world. It is said that this 3 treasures Rui money can swallow the energy of the starry sky. According to the amount of energy it swallows, it can appear in 3 colors. The mysterious light that it emits has the effect of sealing. Among the 3 colors, the bronze color corresponds to the constellation, the silver color corresponds to the moon, and the gold color corresponds to Rizhao. This kind of sealing light can't be resisted by ordinary cultivators. However, this treasure has been lost for a long time and hasn't been seen in the world for many years. I never thought. As he spoke, he looked at Small Melon with a complicated gaze. After listening to his explanation, Lu Yi immediately realized that the ancient coin should be the 3 treasures Rui money. This was because what Gu Tai said was no different from the power that the ancient coin had displayed previously. Gu Tai spoke again, "This beast has the bloodline of a Pai Xiu. Everyone should have heard that the Pai Xiu is in charge of wealth. It only goes in and doesn't go out. The 3 treasures Rui money is wealth. This beast has swallowed it. Perhaps some strange changes have occurred in its bloodline because of this." As he spoke, he cupped his fists at Lu Yi. "You're really lucky. If it were any other beast pet, swallowing the 3 treasures Rui money wouldn't have ended well." What he meant was that there were too many coincidences for a beast like Small Melon to be born. Lu Yi smiled. "Then I'm really lucky. What should be shown had been shown." He believed that after the news of Rizhao spread, it wouldn't be long before the entire starry sky knew that 3-World Island had a supreme treasure. When that time came, no one would dare to set their sights on the Wanxiang Sea. If it weren't for the fact that he had no other choice, Lu Yi actually didn't want to show Small Melon in public. This was 3-World Island's trump card. Even if others had their suspicions, as long as they didn't actively reveal it, there would be no concrete evidence for their suspicions. However, due to certain considerations, Lu Yi still did so. That was because 3-World Island's foundation wasn't strong enough. The existence of a supreme treasure could greatly increase 3-World Island's influence. Everyone returned to the main hall and the banquet continued. After showing off Small Melon's ability, Lu Yi could clearly feel that the Rizhao present were much more polite towards him. Half a day later, the music ended and everyone dispersed. The Rizhao this time was led by 3-World Island to set the tone for the future development of the Wanxiang Sea. After the chaos, the various spiritual islands in the Wanxiang Sea had 1,000 things to do. Every Rizhao had their own matters to attend to. Lu Yi brought Luan Xiao to send off the guests. He channeled his transcendence energy to expel the smell of alcohol from his body. Then he took out the tattered heavenly Luo umbrella and lowered his head to inspect it. Since this treasure was already broken, Lu Yi thought it was useless. That was why he didn't mind letting Gu Tai inspect it. Who would have thought that after chatting with Gu Tai and the others, he would obtain a useful piece of information? Under normal circumstances, no one could repair a damaged treasure. That was because the treasure itself was an accessory of a supreme treasure. It wasn't artificially refined. However, there was a way to repair a damaged treasure. And that was to place it in a spirit jade mine. As for the specific reason, Gu Tai and the others couldn't explain it clearly. They only repeated it based on the records they had read. Gu Tai wasn't the only one who said this. Sui Lin and the others had also confirmed it. However, although this method of repairing a treasure was useful, it took a long time. Could easily take 100 years. With the heavenly Luo umbrella damaged to this extent, even if it was placed in a spirit jade mine, it would take hundreds or thousands of years to restore it to its original state. When Lu Yi heard that there was a chance to repair the heavenly Luo umbrella, he was looking forward to it. Initially, he didn't know the power of the heavenly Luo umbrella. After all, this thing was destroyed by Small Melon's golden light. However, Gu Tai and the others held the heavenly Luo umbrella in high esteem, which made Lu Yi realize the immense value of this treasure. The protection it provided was indeed nothing in front of the triple treasure scepter money. However, in front of other treasures of the same quality, it was extremely powerful. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was impregnable. Small Melon wasn't Lu Ye's pet beast. It was Hua Xi's pet beast. Small Melon's golden light seal wasn't unbreakable. At the very least, that golden light couldn't seal the soul. However, if Hua Xi had the protection of the heavenly Luo umbrella and the triple treasure scepter money, one could attack and one could defend. Hua Xi's safety would no longer be a concern. However, when he heard that it would take hundreds or thousands of years to repair the heavenly Luo umbrella, he immediately lost interest. By that time, Hua Xi would probably be at the peak of the sunshine state. However, as if he could read Lu Ye's mind, Gu Tai quickly made a suggestion. That was to place the damaged heavenly Luo umbrella together with the real treasure. That way there would be a chance for the heavenly Luo umbrella to be restored. However, there was only a chance. If the treasures were incompatible with each other, this method would be useless. According to Lu Ye's understanding, this repair method should be done when the treasures were in close contact with each other. The treasure's mysteries would seep into the treasures, aiding in the repair. Thus, even if the treasures weren't compatible with each other, they shouldn't clash. Lu Yi wasn't sure if the heavenly Luo umbrella would be compatible with the triple treasure scepter money, but it was worth a try. With a thought, Lu Yi handed the damaged heavenly Luo umbrella to Wan Xiao. Senior sister, bring this to Hua Si and let her take care of it. Wan Xiao took the heavenly Luo umbrella and nodded slightly. She couldn't help but ask, junior brother, junior sister Hua Si has been sealed for many years. Although her strength has increased greatly after breaking the seal, there seems to be something wrong with her soul. She doesn't remember us at all. Do you want to go and take a look? Lu Yi was stunned. She doesn't even remember you? Wan Xiao nodded. Who can she remember now? No one. Even when Shui Yuan went to talk to her, she acted like she was a stranger. Are you serious? Lu Yi blinked. After thinking for a while, he realized that he hadn't offended her all these years. Moreover, she had been sealed all this time. He didn't have the chance to offend her even if he wanted to. What? Wan Xiao didn't hear him clearly. Nothing. Lu Yi shook his head. After thinking for a while, he said, I'll take care of this, but I have other things to do now. After pondering for a while, he decided not to hide it from Wan Xiao. Zixian has already sent out her troops. More than 10 Rizhao are leading the demon race army and are on their way to Jade Conch Galaxy. If He Yun didn't lie, they should arrive in Jade Conch Galaxy in 2.5 months. It was precisely because Jade Conch Galaxy was facing such a situation that he had to completely resolve the matter in the Thousand Elephant Sea first. This way he wouldn't have any worries. Showing Little Melon's ability to the outside world was also for this reason. Otherwise, after he left, there might be some clowns who would try to stir up trouble. However, it was different now. As long as Little Melon was in charge of the Three-World Island, there wouldn't be any trouble in the vast Wanxiang Sea. Wan Xiao was shocked. Why would Zixian send out her troops to Jade Conch Galaxy? Jade Conch Galaxy was such a remote place. There were only 3 large domains in total. What could Zixian gain by sending her troops there? Chapter 2008. Zixian was such a famous top-level domain. How could she suddenly send troops to a domain without enough benefits? What confused Wan Xiao even more was how Zixian knew the correct route to Jade Conch. It was Lu Yi who led them all the way from Jade Conch to the Wanxiang Sea. After going through many difficulties, they finally opened up the route from Jade Conch to Wanxiang Sea. If Zixian did not know the correct route, she would never send troops to Jade Conch. However, they still did so. Some of the constellations went missing back then. Some of them fell into the hands of Yuan Du. He used the soul-searching technique. Lu Yi slowly explained the whole story. He Yun would go to Jade Conch because of Yuan Du's instigation. It was also because of his own selfishness. In the conflict between Zixian Island and the Three-World Island, Zixian suffered a great loss and He Yun lost face. However, neither He Yun nor Yuan Du expected that after He Yun arrived at the 9 states, he would find another thing that he cared about. This led to the current situation of Zixian sending troops to Jade Conch. Lu Yi generally saw through He Yun's plan. He should want to find the inheritance of the Dao tree. Therefore, on one hand he personally took action in the Wanxiang Sea. At the same time he let Zixian send troops to the 9 states and take it down. In this way, no matter where the inheritance of the Dao tree was, it could not escape his control. His plan was very good, but man proposes, God disposes. In the end he ended up dead and his Dao dissipated. Wan Xiao was furious when she heard this. Yuan Du, you old dog, you deserve to die. Looking back, there was no direct conflict between the Three-World Island and Yuan Du back then. The island even had the intention to worship him. However, Yuan Du did not care about the cultivators of the Three-World Island. He wanted to support Baiwa to occupy the Three-World Island. This led to the subsequent conflicts. The conflicts expanded rapidly until the last time, he even personally took action. After cursing, Wan Xiao began to worry again. Zixian is too powerful for Jade Conch to resist. Junior brother, what should we do? As far as she knew, there was not a single sunshine in the entire Jade Conch Galaxy. How could they resist when Zixian targeted them? She wished she could fly back to Jade Conch now. Even if she was just a sunshine, even if she could not defeat Zixian's army, she would fight to the death to protect her homeland. Senior sister, don't be nervous. I have my own plans. You should rest well for the time being. Nothing will happen to you, Luo. Strangely enough, when Wan Xiao heard that Zixian had sent troops to Jade Conch, she was both furious and worried about her homeland. But when Lu Yi said this, that nervousness and worry suddenly disappeared. replaced by an indescribable sense of stability. It was as if Lu Yi said that Jade Conch was fine, so it was definitely fine. I understand. Wan Xiaoan nodded and quickly withdrew. Since Lu Yi had told her to rest, it was tantamount to saying that in the future, there would be a place where he would need her help. Lu Yi stood in place and thought for a moment before suddenly turning his head to look in a certain direction. In that position, Wuxia stood quietly at the edge of the cliff. Her beautiful eyes gazed at the endless sea of sponges with a profound look in her eyes. Sensing his gaze, Wuxia turned to look at him. Their eyes met, and she nodded at Lu Yi from afar, revealing a gentle smile. However, he didn't say anything else. If it were in the past, this would have been impossible. But now Wuxia was like this. Lu Yi blinked and couldn't be bothered to pay attention to her. The main thing was that he still had some things to deal with. He didn't have the time to fight a battle of wits and courage with this woman. It wouldn't be too late to deal with her after he was done with the matters at hand. His figure flashed and he disappeared. After a short while, Lu Yi appeared in Chu Xin's pavilion. The two brothers sat down. Chu Xin had a worried look on his face. Big brother, I'm in an awkward situation now. Where should we go in the future? In the entire three-world island, apart from Chu Xin who didn't belong to Jade Conch Galaxy, there was a group of people who came with Chu Xin from Jianghu. Because at that time, the three-world island was nominally under Jianghu. Jianghu naturally had to express their gratitude to the outside world by sending disciples to the three-world island to cultivate. There weren't many people in this group. Lu Yi had never treated them unfairly. They didn't lack any benefits that the cultivators of the three-world island had. Previously, when Yuandu attacked, this group had followed the cultivators of the three-world island to the Mermaid Clan's territory. However, when they returned, the Wanxiang Sea had been turned upside down. Even the authority that their galaxy had maintained over this precious land for tens of thousands of years had been taken away. In terms of emotions, Chu Xin was naturally biased towards Lu Yi. The two brothers had met in the constellation, and their friendship had been extraordinary for so many years. However, in the end, Chu Xin was still in Wanxiang cultivator. Jianghu stood behind him. The conflict between the three-world island and the Wanxiang galaxy had affected him to some extent. In the past few days, he had been restraining the cultivators of his realm. He had them stay in their own residences and forbade them from going out. He was afraid that they would clash with the cultivators of the three-world island. If Lu Yi didn't come looking for him, he would have gone looking for Lu Yi. The feeling of being stuck in the middle was too uncomfortable. Of course, Lu Yi knew what he meant. Hearing this, he said, "Don't worry so much. You represent the Jianghu. Your mother has the final say on their attitude towards the three-world island. There's no point in you worrying." Chu Xin's expression was bitter. "That's true, but my mother is also in Wanxiang cultivator. Such a big thing happened while she wasn't here. What if she comes back and finds out?" As he spoke, he seemed to think of something. He looked at Lu Yi. "Big brother, let's make this clear first. Don't use that golden light to cover my mother." His mother was indeed powerful, but he had heard that the golden light was the power of a supreme treasure. No matter how powerful his mother was, she definitely wouldn't be able to block it. If she was really covered by the golden light, she definitely wouldn't have a good ending. He didn't want to see any conflict between Lu Yi and his mother. Lu Yi couldn't help but laugh. "Don't worry, it won't happen." After a pause, his expression became serious. He said, "Actually, I've always been curious about something." "What is it?" Chu Xin asked. "The Wanxiang galaxy has 6 large realms. Why were there only 5 spots for Rizhao to guard? This didn't make sense. If there were benefits to be shared equally, then there should be 6 of them. However, the Wanxiang galaxy only had Qiling realm. The other 5 realms all had Rizhao overseeing the Wanxiang Sea. Lu Yi didn't know how strong Jianghu was before, but after a few recent encounters, he could faintly sense that Jianghu wasn't an ordinary Rizhao. Her strength was probably among the best in the entire Wanxiang galaxy. This could also be seen from the timing of Yuandu's attack. He was obviously very wary of Jianghu, which was why he attacked the three-world island after Jianghu left. Jianghu's departure from the three-world island might even have something to do with him. He might have used some method to lure Jianghu away. Why wasn't such a powerful cultivator guarding the Wanxiang Sea Rizhao? Chu Xin wasn't stupid. When Lu Yi asked this question, he roughly understood what Lu Yi meant. He thought for a moment and said, "Big brother, there are some things that I've only heard Aunt you mention casually in the past. I can't be sure. Mother never tells me too much, so I understand." Lu Yi nodded. Chu Xin pondered for a moment and said, "It's like this. In the past there were only 5 realms in our galaxy. The Che-Ling realm rose to prominence with Mother's rise. You've been to the Che-Ling realm before. It's very small and there aren't many people. If not for Mother's fame, this realm wouldn't have much value. Lu Yi nodded. During the process of Mother's rise, she gradually made a name for herself and attracted the attention of the Nicho in our solar system. I don't know the specifics of what happened in between, but I heard from Aunt Yu that after Mother became Yu Yao, she left our solar system to explore the outside world. One day she suddenly returned as a Nicho and stood on equal footing with the other Nicho in our solar system. However, after so many years, the relationship between our realm and the other realms has been very indifferent, and there hasn't been much interaction. Our Che-Ling realm has also been in a semi-closed state. Half a day later, Lu Yi left Chu Shen's place. Lu Yi couldn't care less about the attitude of the other Rizhao in the Wanxiang galaxy. After all, he had the final say in the Wanxiang Sea. However, he couldn't ignore Jiu Yan. Jiu Yan had given him a lot of help, especially when the Three-World Island was just developing. Without the Che-Ling realm's cultivators, how could the Three-World Island be what it was today? Lu Yi was indebted to her. Of course, he couldn't be an ungrateful person. He didn't bring Little Melon to kill Yuan Sei and the others in the other realms because he cared about Jiu Yan's reputation. Previously, when they were enemies, he killed Yuan Du and the others. However, if he really attacked the other realms, it would be the same as trampling on Jiu Yan's reputation. Of course, Lu Yi couldn't do such a thing. Jiu Yan wasn't here now, but she would return eventually. Moreover, it wouldn't be too late. The changes in the Wanxiang Sea were too great. News would spread very quickly. Therefore, no matter where Jiu Yan went, she would definitely rush back as soon as she received the news. Therefore, Lu Yi had to figure out Jiu Yan's general attitude first. After chatting with Chu Shen, he more or less had an idea. Chu Shen didn't say much, but he vaguely sensed that there seemed to be some conflict between Jiu Yan and Yuan Sei. As a result, Jiu Yan didn't have a good relationship with the other realms. Mu Qing was the only one he could talk to. Therefore, if he was lucky, the Three-World Island wouldn't have to fight with Jiu Yan. After all, he wasn't the one who started the fight. Everything he did was because he had no choice but to retaliate. However, the strength of his retaliation was a little too strong. It was beyond the range of what the enemy could bear. Returning to his own pavilion, Lu Yi sat down cross-legged and seriously thought about what Chu Shen had said. After confirming that there weren't too many problems, he stretched out his hand. A treasure gourd appeared in his palm. It was the sword gourd that he hadn't used for a long time. After obtaining this treasure, it had indeed provided Lu Yi with a lot of help. Back then, he had used the name Li Taibai in the 9 regions because of the power of this treasure. During that time, he had been a free and unfettered sword cultivator. He had also made a name for himself and was highly valued by the myriad demons Ridge. End of chapter. Chapter 2010. Sword Gourd, Elixir Gourd. Tang Jun was in disbelief. How many treasures do you have? The elixir gourd was a secret in the Three-World Island. Only a few people knew about it and Tang Jun was one of them. However, the elixir gourd was only used for alchemy and was not suitable for fighting. Therefore, in some aspects, it was much less valuable than the fire gourd in the first Yuan world. However, he never expected that Lu Yi would suddenly bring out a sword gourd. Now, it seemed that Lu Yi already had it, but he was blind and did not see its true appearance. I have a few. Lu Yi answered casually. The sword gourd, elixir gourd, little constellation hall's dice of fate were all treasures. The Azura field in the 9 regions was also a treasure. Tang Jun looked at him in a daze, not knowing what to say. After a while, old Tang left. Lu Yi continued to urge the sword gourd to devour more treasures. The sword in the gourd became more and more solid. It wasn't until it had devoured many more magic treasures that the sword suddenly transformed from solid to transparent. At this moment, Lu Ye's heart stirred. He faintly sensed that the sword chi in the sword gourd had reached its peak. Just by sensing it, he felt a piercing pain in his soul. Lu Yi did not know what kind of power this sword chi could unleash. However, from the fire gourd's performance, the sword chi's killing power was not ordinary. There were still some treasures in front of him. Lu Yi thought for a while and pointed the mouth of the sword gourd at these treasures. In the end, he discovered that the sword gourd was unable to devour any more magic treasures. This undoubtedly confirmed his previous guess. After the sword gourd devoured magic treasures, the mysteries within would quickly refine the magic treasures and transform them into the capital to strengthen the sword chi. Now that the sword chi had reached its peak, it naturally did not need to devour any more treasures. Lu Yi roughly estimated that the total value of the magical treasures used to nurture this sword chi was about 500 million spirit jades. This was not an ordinary expenditure. Only the three-world island, which was rich enough to rival a country, could afford it. If it was an ordinary domain, even if they had such a treasure, it would be difficult for them to unleash its full power. If the sword gourd was like this, the fire gourd should be similar too. He just didn't know how Yuan Sei managed to nurture the strange fire in the fire gourd. He probably needed some special methods. As for the other killing attribute treasures, most of them came with a price. It was no wonder that this thing was rarely seen. It was generally regarded as a treasure to suppress the realms by the major realms. There was no other choice. In comparison, the small melon's ability to activate the three treasures Rui coin was simply too convenient. There was so much water in the 10,000 elephant sea that no matter how much it swallowed, it would never dry up. Lu Yi picked up the sword gourd and walked out of his pavilion. Soon he arrived at the side of the three-world island. He dived into the sea and went deeper. He wanted to test the might of this sword chi. Now that there was no one on the 10,000 elephant sea that he could test his sword chi on, he could only search beneath the sea. There were many star beasts living under the 10,000 elephant sea. However, most of them were active in the deep sea, so ordinary people couldn't see them at all. Lu Yi spent an entire day before he finally found the trace of a Sunshine State star beast. This star beast wasn't weak, but it acted on instinct. When it sensed Lu Ye's aura, it swam towards him without hesitation. Judging from its posture, it was obvious that it didn't come with good intentions. Lu Yi stood still. When the star beast was 1,000 feet away from him, he suddenly activated the power of the sword gourd with his dermic powers. The sword gourd in his hand shook slightly, and a ray of white light shot out from the mouth of the gourd. The white light was extremely fast. It was already 1,000 miles away when it appeared. The deep waters of the 10,000 elephant sea didn't seem to have any resistance to it. The sunshine star beast that was swimming towards him suddenly had a huge gash in its abdomen. Blood flowed everywhere. Through the gash, Lu Yi could vaguely see the squirming innards inside. It wasn't dead. It wasn't that the sword chi of the sword gourd wasn't powerful enough. It was just that the sword chi was too fast. Lu Yi couldn't control it completely, causing his accuracy to be slightly off. A strange roar was heard. Although the star beast wasn't very intelligent, it knew how to avoid danger. When it sensed that something was wrong, it didn't dare to stay on the spot. It immediately turned around and tried to escape. But it was too late. The white light sword chi that was 1,000 miles away returned and accurately pierced through its body, creating a huge hole in its huge body. Lu Yi raised his hand and grabbed the sword chi that was returning to him. In an instant, his hand was covered in blood. His strong physique couldn't withstand the power of the sword chi. Even his soul felt piercing pain when he felt it at such a close distance. The sword chi in his hand gave off a rebellious aura. It was slightly twisted, and thin rays of light swam around the white light. Lu Yi felt that what he was holding was not a sword chi, but a bolt of lightning that could explode at any moment. His expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly retracted the sword chi back into the sword gourd. He looked down and saw that the wound on his hand hadn't healed immediately. There were still remnants of the sword chi that kept tearing at his flesh. This thing can't be touched, Lu Yi immediately thought. Fortunately, the talent tree reacted. As the talent tree burned, the remnant sword chi on his hand gradually showed signs of disappearing. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. When he looked up again, the sunshine star beast was already dead. Its huge corpse had turned into a bloody mist under the raging power of the sword chi. Not even its bones were left behind. The power of the sword gourd was terrifying. Lu Yi was overjoyed. His figure flashed and he went back the way he came. He was very satisfied with the result of testing the sword gourd's power this time. However, after returning to the three-world island, Lu Yi found another problem. The sword chi contained in the sword gourd had obviously been greatly depleted. Because the sword gourd could continue to devour magic treasures. Looking at it this way, the sword chi was at its strongest when it was just released. However, every time it was released, it would be depleted. In terms of the value of magic treasures, each time it was released, it would cost about 100 million spirit jades. If it was released a few more times, the power of the sword chi would be greatly reduced. Using the sword gourd to fight the enemy was simply burning money. However, compared to the tyrannical power of the sword gourd, this price seemed acceptable. He just needed to prepare more magic treasures for the sword gourd to devour. This wasn't difficult. Many of the magic treasures that Tang Jun had given him were still unused. Lu Yi had put them all into the little flower realm. The matter of the sword gourd had come to an end. Next, he had to solve the problem of the black fruit on the talent tree. This matter couldn't be delayed. If he accidentally swallowed someone when he was fighting with them, he would go further and further down the path of Qianyan. He already had some ideas about this matter. Now, what he had to do was to realize these ideas. According to his previous experiments, he could split a part of the black fruit when he condensed the talent tree clone. However, he couldn't give up the talent tree. In the end, he had to merge it back, so this kind of splitting was meaningless. Since the talent tree clone couldn't do it, what about the treasure blood clone? Indeed, he couldn't give up the talent tree clone, but the treasure blood clone was no problem. What Lu Yi wanted to do now was to try to split a part of the black fruit into the clone while condensing the precious blood doppelganger. As long as this idea worked, he could continuously weaken the black fruit by abandoning the precious blood doppelganger. Then, he could completely remove the black fruit from his body. Time flew by. Half a month later. Recently, the three-world island had been very lively. The entire Wanxiang Sea had slowly returned to its original prosperity. It could even be said that because of the previous battle, the Wanxiang Sea was much less chaotic now. This was a good sign. In the bamboo building, Lu Yi was meditating with his eyes closed. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and looked in a direction. In the next moment, he stood up and flashed outside. He flew into the air and went out of the protective formation. He stood outside the three-world island. Wan Xiao and Yen Miao both sensed this and were about to rush over. However, they were stopped by his voice transmission. Only one person flew to his side. It was Chu Shen. Big brother. Chu Shen worriedly followed Lu Ye's gaze. He could vaguely see a stream of light rapidly approaching them. Moreover, that stream of light emitted an extremely familiar aura. Mother seems to be very angry. Big brother, please bear with her for a while. Jiu Yan was back. Chu Shen had been very worried about what would happen when his mother and Lu Yi met again after the turmoil in the Wanxiang Sea. However, no matter how worried he was, he couldn't stop this from happening. At this moment, when he felt his mother's aura, his heart was filled with anxiety. Lu Yi smiled. It's okay. He let out a long sigh of relief. Things didn't seem to be so bad. The fact that Juyan had come here so openly meant that she wanted to talk to him. This was exactly what Lu Yi had been hoping for. He could ignore everyone else in the Wanxiang galaxy but not Jiu Yan. In his heart, he didn't want to become enemies with Jiu Yan. This wasn't just because of Chu Shen, but also because Jiu Yan had treated him well. However, as a cultivator of the Wanxiang galaxy, Jiu Yan couldn't escape from the grudge between Three World Island and Wanxiang. Wanxiang had suffered such a great loss with the deaths of several rises. Jiu Yan couldn't just sit by and watch. Lu Yi didn't want to become enemies because of this. The stream of light came closer and closer. A moment later, the light faded away, revealing Jiu Yan's voluptuous figure. Lu Yi looked at her face with all his might, but he still couldn't see her face clearly. Her face was covered by a layer of light as usual. It had been like this when Yu Yao was here. Now that Lu Yi was rises, he thought that even if he couldn't see through this layer of light, he should have made some progress. However, whether it was Yu Yao or rises, his eyes couldn't see through this layer of light. Lu Yi understood that Jiu Yan was indeed very strong. She couldn't be compared to the other rises in the Wanxiang galaxy. Lu Yi greets Senior. Welcome back, Senior. Lu Yi put away his thoughts and bowed politely. End of chapter. Chapter 2011. Outside the Three-World Island, Jiu Yan finally returned after more than a month. Lu Yi personally came out to welcome her, accompanied by Chu Shen. In midair, Jiu Yan stood quietly with a complicated expression, but more than that, she was annoyed. She was not angry at Lu Yi. She had already understood the cause and effect of the previous turmoil. What Lu Yi had done was a last resort. No matter who it was, they would not have allowed themselves to be trampled on by others in such a situation. She was angry at Yuan Du in order to transfer her away from the Three-World Island. Yuan Du had spent a lot of effort and finally achieved his wish. Moreover, Yuan Du had joined forces with Zi Shen's demon venerables, completely ignoring the rules set by their own galaxy and bullying the weak. And the result? In the end, he had died and the strength of their own galaxy had been greatly reduced. Jiu Yan felt aggrieved to be in the same galaxy as such people. When she received the news, she could not believe it and hurried back. After seeing Yuan Sei and the others, she confirmed that the rumors were true. In less than 2 months after she left the galaxy, the entire Wanxiang Sea had changed. Their own galaxy had completely lost control of the Wanxiang Sea. Thinking back to how Yuan Sei and the others had tried to persuade her before she came here, she felt it was funny. Now, the news of the Three World Islands Lu Yi holding a starry sky treasure had spread everywhere. Yuan Sei and the others were in a constant state of panic, afraid that Lu Yi would use the treasure to attack their realms. If that happened, they would not be able to resist. Yuan Sei had almost died at Lu Ye's hands before, so he still had lingering fears. Therefore, they had been gathering in the Yuan realm for a period of time. Those people no longer hoped to reclaim the right to rule the Wanxiang Sea. They only hoped that the enmity between them and the Three World Island would end here. In the future, they would live peacefully in their own realms and the Three World Island would not find trouble with them. Jiao Yin had to come because the Three World Island had nominally worshipped her. It would be unreasonable if she did not show up when such a big change happened in the Wanxiang Sea. Secondly, Yuan Sei and the others also hoped that she could come and persuade them. Now that you're sunshine, you don't have to call me senior anymore. Let's talk as peers. Jiao Yin suppressed her thoughts and spoke slowly. Thinking back, she had wanted to take Lu Yi in as a disciple and teach him some pointers. Who would have thought that he would have already advanced? This speed was simply too fast. Lu Yi blinked his eyes and readily accepted her advice. Senior martial sister, you must be tired from your journey. Please come in for a chat. As he spoke, he gestured with his hand. Jiao Yin nodded slightly and walked over. After stepping into the Three World Island, he inadvertently glanced in the direction of the Spirit Jade Mine. That was where Ma Bin was recuperating. Since that great battle, he had been staying on the Three World Island and had not returned to the Merfolk territory. Anyway, to him it did not matter where he healed. It had been inconvenient before, but now it did not matter. After a short while, the host and guests took their seats in the guest hall. Jiao Yin glanced at Chu Shen. Get out. I have something to say to your brother. The corner of Chu Shen's eyes twitched. His mind was in a mess. Lu Yi was his brother and the one speaking was his mother. Just now, his mother wanted to talk to his brother as equals. What kind of relationship was this? But since Jiao Yin had spoken, how could he dare to disobey? Moreover, he could also see that his mother didn't seem to have any intention of making things difficult for his elder brother. Thus he felt a lot more at ease. After bowing, he winked at Lu Yi before withdrawing. The hall was silent for a moment. After a while, Jiao Yin suddenly spoke. You've got guts. The treasure isn't here. Aren't you afraid that I'll attack you and kill you? Senior martial sister, are you going to do that? Lu Yi looked at Jiao Yin. Do you think I won't? Lu Yi smiled. If senior martial sister wanted to kill me, you wouldn't have come here so openly. And even if senior martial sister did kill me, what good would it do you? To be honest, that treasure doesn't actually belong to me. So even if someone kills me, that treasure will still be guarding the Three World Island. Jiao Yin was surprised. That treasure doesn't belong to you? Lu Yi shook his head. That's the pet beast of a relative of mine. I only borrowed it for a while. Relative? Jiao Yin observed his expression and tone. She's probably your woman, isn't she? We're not married. We're not married. Lu Yi was a little embarrassed. Jiao Yin snorted. I was wondering why I didn't see any treasures on the Three World Island. So that's why. Senior should know about the Merfolk tribe. Something happened to her in the past and she's been cultivating there. She only came out of seclusion this time. The cultivators from Che Ling realm who were stationed on the Three World Island had all been to the Merfolk tribe's territory. Some of them even benefited from the Conch Palace, so Jiao Yin wasn't completely ignorant of the Merfolk tribe's situation. Jiao Yin clearly didn't want to talk about this. She changed the topic. Now that the Three World Island controls the Omniscient Sea, what plans do you have for the future? Lu Yi asked. Senior martial sister, do you have any good suggestions? Jiao Yan's tone was strange. Don't go too far. I'm the omniscient Hikari. Our galaxy suffered the greatest loss in this chaos. I didn't make an enemy out of you because of Shen, or how dare you ask for my opinion? Do you really think I'm the omniscient Hikari? Lu Ye's expression was bitter. Senior martial sister, please don't blame me. I'm just at a loss for what to do after suddenly ascending to such a high position. Senior martial sister, you know that the cultivators of the Three World Island all come from remote places. That place hasn't even had a Hikari before. This time, I was lucky enough to gain the recognition of many fellow cultivators and gain control of the Omniscient Sea. However, the foundation of the Three World Island is weak. Now we only have 3 Hikari and they've all just ascended. They don't have much experience and haven't experienced much. So when Senior Martial Sister asked me about my plans, I really don't know what to say. He looked so miserable. If someone who didn't know better heard him, they might actually believe him. But after thinking about it carefully, everything he said was true. But when put together, it felt a little strange. Isn't there still Ma Bin? Jiao Yan asked slowly. When Ma Bin was mentioned, she suddenly became angry. She snorted. The Azure Demon King is famous in the universe. With a mainstay like him, what are you worried about? She had been on the Three-World Island all this time. She didn't realize the relationship between the Three-World Island and Ma Bin at all. She even hid him in the mermaid territory. Senior Ma Bin hasn't recovered from his injuries yet. Moreover, the Azure Demon King is notorious. It's not a problem to ask him to kill people, but he can't manage a treasure like the Omniscient Sea. Lu Yi looked distressed. Suddenly his expression changed. He looked up at Jiao Yan. Senior Martial Sister, why don't you help me? Jiao Yan was stunned. She stared at Lu Yi. After a long while she said, do you want to hear what you're saying? She came here to see the changes in the Omniscient Sea with her own eyes. Secondly, she was entrusted by Yuan Sei and the others. After all, it was the Hikari of the galaxy. She couldn't ignore Yuan Sei and the others, even if she was extremely unwilling. She didn't expect Lu Yi to make such a suggestion. With her status as the omniscient Hikari, it was destined that she wouldn't have any close ties with the Three-World Island in the future, let alone help Lu Yi manage the Omniscient Sea. In her opinion, Lu Yi's suggestion was simply unrealistic. Lu Yi didn't seem to notice. She picked up the teacup beside her and took a sip. Then she said slowly, the Omniscient Sea is the largest top spiritual island in the Omniscient Sea. It's also the symbol of the Omniscient Sea. In the previous battle, the people on the Omniscient Island were plunged into misery and suffering. Now there are many things waiting to be done. This is the loss of the Omniscient Sea and the entire universe. Although there are a few other spiritual islands like the Three-World Island on the Omniscient Sea, without the Omniscient Island, the flow of many goods will not be smooth. This is extremely detrimental to the development of the Omniscient Sea. If Senior Martial Sister is willing, I can let you manage the Omniscient Island. With your status, you can completely rebuild the Omniscient Chamber of Commerce. Rebuild the Omniscient Chamber of Commerce? Jiao Yan's expression changed. Yes. Lu Yi nodded. The Omniscient Chamber of Commerce has existed for so many years. It has many channels and connections that belong solely to it. This is something that no other force can compare with. Because of the previous incident, the Omniscient Chamber of Commerce only exists in name. However, if Senior Martial Sister is willing to step forward at this time with your background and strength, the Omniscient Chamber of Commerce can be easily rebuilt. Jiao Yan remained silent. She had to admit that Lu Yi's suggestion was very tempting. An expert like her had no interest in external things, and she didn't care about the survival of a Chamber of Commerce. However, if she could take back the Omniscient Island from Lu Yi, it would be beneficial for her. Firstly, the Omniscient Island had the largest spiritual jade vein in the entire Omniscient Sea. She could cultivate there. Secondly, taking back the Omniscient Island would also restore the Omniscient Galaxy's reputation. Although they would lose the right to rule the entire Omniscient Sea, at least they would still be able to control the Omniscient Island. Thirdly, the Omniscient Chamber of Commerce brought in enormous profits every year. It would be extremely beneficial for the future development of cultivators in the galaxy. The Omniscient Chamber of Commerce had indeed lost a lot of resources and personnel in this incident, but its foundation was still there. As long as she spread the word, the major realms in the galaxy would definitely support her. Rebuilding the Omniscient Chamber of Commerce would be a piece of cake. This was her unique advantage. No one else would be able to do the same. Jiao Yan glanced at Lu Yi, then recalled his pitiful act from before. She suddenly realized something. You've been planning this for a long time? Lu Yi's expression was solemn. Senior Martial Sister, you've misunderstood me. I only came up with this idea on the spur of the moment. Ha! Jiao Yan chuckled. She naturally didn't believe his nonsense. How could such a thing be decided on the spur of the moment? He must have thought it through long ago. It could even be said that Lu Yi had been waiting for her all this time. You are willing to part with it? Jiao Yan asked Lu Yi. This was the Omniscient Island, the symbol of the Omniscient Sea. It was inconceivable that Lu Yi would be willing to give it to her. Lu Yi said, the Omniscient Island is indeed precious, but it depends on who has it. If it was in the hands of the Three Realms Island, it would be a top spiritual island. However, in the hands of Senior Sister, it is the symbol of the Omniscient Sea. Rebuilding the Omniscient Chamber of Commerce wasn't something that could be solved by force. There were too many things involved. Only someone like Jiu Yin, who came from the galaxy, could quickly grasp the channels and connections left behind by the omniscient Chamber of Commerce. End of chapter. Chapter 2012. The Three-World Island was undoubtedly the one that benefited the most from the chaos in the Myriad Sea. Now, it had obtained the recognition of the various galaxies, and it was nominally in charge of the Myriad Sea. It was the well-deserved owner of this treasured land. Not only that, but the Wanxiang Island, Purple Jade Island, and Winged Sky Island had also fallen into the Three-World Islands' hands. A single faction controlling 4 top-tier spiritual islands at the same time was something that had never happened in the history of the Wanxiang Sea. However, the cultivators of the Three-World Island could not take over so many territories. Under such circumstances, it was undoubtedly a good choice to let Jiu Yin manage the Wanxiang Island. First, it would reduce the pressure on the Three-World Island, and second, Jiu Yin could quickly rebuild the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce. Once Jiu Yin joined the alliance, the remaining sunshine of the Wanxiang Galaxy would not be a threat. Because of these considerations, Lu Yi had been waiting for Jiu Yan's return. Jiu Yin was surprised by Lu Yi's suggestion, but she could not refuse. If she was alone, she would not have to think so much. However, she was not alone. After a moment of silence, Jiu Yin suddenly said, "What are your conditions?" "What are your conditions?" Lu Yi was not willing to give the Wanxiang Island to her for free. After all, he was not alone. He had a faction behind him. At this moment, the conversation between the two of them was based on their personal friendship. It was a negotiation between two major forces, so there were some things that had to be said clearly. It's very simple. Lu Yi put down his teacup. The Three-World Island will take half of the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce's net income. The other half will be yours. Even if it was only half of the net income, it was still much more than the total income of the Three-World Island. This was the advantage that the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce had accumulated over countless years. It was not something that the Three-World Island could easily replace. It's reasonable. Jiu Yin nodded. She was not surprised by this condition. In fact, Lu Yi's condition was very generous. Also, Lu Yi changed the topic. I want Yuan Sei's fire gourd. As long as he is willing to give it to me, all our previous grudges can be written off. Yuan Du, the instigator, was dead. The other sunshine of the Wanxiang Galaxy did not have much conflict with him. Lu Yi did not want to kill them all. However, Yuan Sei and Yuan Du were related after all. Moreover, after the Formless Palace left that day, Yuan Sei still tried to attack him. This debt naturally had to be settled. The strange fire contained within the fire gourd was something that even the talent tree was interested in. If it could devour it, it would definitely increase the talent tree's fuel reserves. Moreover, the fire gourd itself was a treasure. The fire gourd. Jiu Yin murmured. That's the origin world's treasure. It's more important than his life. If you want it, Yuan Sei won't compromise. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows and said, Isn't he afraid that I'll kill my way into the Yuan realm? That's why they've all gathered in the Yuan realm to keep themselves warm. It's all to guard against you. After your supreme treasure's power is depleted, it needs to devour the Myriad Elephant Sea's water to replenish it. Once it leaves the Myriad Elephant Sea, its effectiveness will be greatly reduced. This is no secret. Lu Yi pondered briefly when he heard this, and then he said, Then forget it. We'll drop this matter for now. He was determined to get the fire gourd. The strange fire contained within the treasure was useful to the talent tree. Moreover, Lu Yi wanted to know what benefits would come from collecting all 7 treasure gourds. Since Jiu Yin said that Yuan Sei wouldn't compromise, he wouldn't alert the enemy. When he had the chance in the future, he would personally go to the Yuan realm and have a good talk with Yuan Sei. Jiu Yin looked at him deeply. She obviously saw through his intentions. She wanted to persuade him, but in the end, she just sighed and didn't say anything. Senior sister, when do you plan to start rebuilding the Myriad Elephant Chamber of Commerce? Lu Yi asked. I'll do it as soon as possible. Jiu Yin stood up and walked out. Lu Yi hurriedly stood up to send her off. When they reached the door, Jiu Yin suddenly turned to look at him. In the previous battle, Yuan Du, Gu Shi, and Qin Xuanba were killed by the Formless Palace. The Myriad Elephant Galaxy and the Formless Palace are irreconcilable enemies. Junior brother, if you find any clues about the Formless Palace in the future, remember to tell me. Lu Yi blinked and nodded. Of course. You don't have to send me off. Jiu Yin flew into the sky as soon as she finished speaking. Lu Yi watched her figure disappear from his sight. He sighed in his heart. After all, she was a veteran Rizhao. With one sentence, she reduced the grievances between the Myriad Elephant Galaxy and the Myriad Elephant Galaxy into a small matter. No one saw who killed Yuandu, Gushi, and Qin because when Lu Yi killed them, it was all in the Blood Sea. At that time, the Formless Palace had just invaded and the entire Wanxiang Sea was in chaos. Although no one saw it with their own eyes, the Rizhao of the Myriad Elephant Galaxy knew who killed the three of them. Knowing was one thing, but whether or not they had the ability to take revenge was another matter. Jiao Yin blamed the Formless Palace for these grievances with one sentence. She was undoubtedly trying to minimize the grievances between Lu Yi and the Myriad Elephant Galaxy. After all, she had already agreed to take over the Wanxiang Island. If these grievances were to be brought out in the open, it would be unavoidable in the future. It was different if she blamed the Formless Palace for the deaths of the three Rizhao. She believed that when this news spread, Yuan Sei and the others would not stand up to refute it. They would only do their best to cover it up. To the current Wanxiang Galaxy, they had indeed lost their rule over the Wanxiang Sea, but at least they still had half of the Wanxiang Island's profits. Although Jiao Yin might have to take a share of this half of the profits as the loser of the battle, this result was barely acceptable. The matter of the Wanxiang Sea had been settled. It was time to return to the 9 states. Zixin and the other demon venerable experts had led the troops to the 9 states. Calculating the time, they should not have arrived yet. However, whether it was the 9 states or Jade Conch, they had never experienced a war of this level. After all, they needed some time to prepare. Therefore, he had to rush back in advance to make arrangements. But before that, with a soft bang, Lu Yi pressed one hand against the wall and forced Hua Xi to the corner of the room. He was half a head taller than Hua Xi. With such a posture, he was close to her and looked down on her. Hua Xi covered her chest with both hands. Her bright and beautiful eyes flashed with a faint golden light. Her temperament was noble and awe-inspiring, but her face was filled with panic and confusion. "What are you doing? I am your elder sister." Ever since that day when they exchanged a few words, she had been referring to herself as his elder sister. Okay. You want to play like this now, right? Lu Yi raised his other hand and gently hooked her smooth chin. Their eyes met and their breaths mingled. Hua Xi quickly tilted her head and panted heavily. Her face was filled with resistance. "No, interesting." Lu Yi laughed heartily. Deep in his heart, Hua Xi was like a spiritual fruit that Lu Yi had never seen before. She emitted a tempting aroma that made him want to swallow her whole. Especially after this round of closed-door cultivation, Hua Xi's temperament had changed greatly. She used to be gentle and kind, but now she gave off a noble and inviolable feeling of holiness. Her unique temperament and her current posture created an intense visual conflict, giving Lu Yi a very novel feeling. He could be sure of one thing. Hua Xi did not lose her memory at all. This was actually very easy to confirm. If there was anyone in the world who was most familiar with Hua Xi, it was none other than him. No matter how good her disguise was, there were still some details that were not well hidden. "There's nothing you can't do. Don't resist." Lu Yi pinched Hua Xi's chin and forced Hua Xi's head to face her. Under Hua Xi's watery eyes, Lu Yi bent down slightly. This bad woman dared to tease him. He didn't have time before, but now that he had time, he naturally had to teach her a lesson and let her know what it meant to be the husband's subordinate. As the distance between them got closer and closer, Hua Xi's eyes were wide open. Tears even seeped out of her eyes. She looked like she was about to be humiliated but could not resist. Lu Yi felt great in his heart. Croak. Suddenly a frog croak came from the side. Lu Yi paused. The next moment, he saw a flash of golden light from the corner of his eye. Oh no. He had just opened his mouth and did not even have time to dodge. His whole body was hit by the golden light. In an instant, his magic power was sealed and his body stiffened. In front of him, Hua Xi, who was on the verge of tears, rolled her eyes. Her previous weakness was swept away, and the corners of her eyes curved. She raised a finger and pointed at Lu Ye's chest. Biting her red lips, she said, "You're having fun, aren't you? Little brother." Her other hand was twisting Lu Ye's waist vigorously. Lu Yi looked at her helplessly and whispered, "Didn't you play for so many days?" After personally experiencing the terrifying power of the Tri-Treasure Scepter, Lu Yi realized that this treasure was unbeatable. At present, he could not even speak except for the power of his divine sense. "I'm happy to." Hua Xi raised her chin and looked at him sideways. "Just tell me, what did I do to offend you? Why do you have to torture me like this?" Lu Yi sighed. Recently he had occasionally wondered how he had offended Wuxia, but no matter how hard he thought about it, he still couldn't figure it out. How could I dare? How could I dare? You're the dignified island master of the three-world island, the current lord of the myriad ocean. You possess extraordinary talent, a dragon amongst men. You're so young and promising. No matter what you do, everything you do is right. How could you possibly have offended me? I'm just a little woman with no one to rely on. Even if I suffer, I can only silently hold back my tears and endure it. As she spoke, she actually covered her face and wept. Her sarcastic tone made Lu Yi more and more certain that he had offended her. A terrible thought surged in his heart and his expression became a little guilty. Wuxia was still talking about her bitterness when Lu Yi suddenly interrupted her. I'm going back to the 9 states. Huaxi's voice stopped abruptly. She looked up at him and smiled. How long has it been since we last met? You're already missing your Yuqing? Bad news. Sure enough, Lu Yi wished he could slap himself. During the years when Huaxi was sealed, he would occasionally visit her. Sometimes he would talk to Huaxi as if he was talking to himself. Perhaps it was because of the guilt in his heart, or perhaps it was because he wanted to stimulate Huaxi and make her wake up earlier, so he said a lot of things that he should not say, including Yuqing. Chapter 2013. From the looks of it, Huaxi did not lose consciousness during the time she was sealed. She must have heard everything he said. Lu Yi struggled a bit. What Yuqing? Huaxi's beautiful eyes twinkled as she smiled. Stop pretending. With a slight push of her magic power, she raised her hand and threw Lu Yi onto the bed. In an instant, Lu Yi's whole body was sprawled out on the bed. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of Huaxi crawling up from the end of the bed and slowly approaching him like a cat. What are you doing? Lu Yi panicked. Although a moment ago Huaxi's various postures had aroused his appetite, now that he had switched between offense and defense, the feeling was completely different. Lowering her body slightly, Huaxi gently drew circles on Lu Yi's chest and said leisurely, "Heartless man, you're dead." Her delicate body bent down, her shadow covering the light. Lu Yi closed his eyes, his heart filled with humiliation. As expected of a starry sky supreme treasure, even if the talent tree's power kept burning its power, it still took 4 days for Lu Yi to slowly regain his freedom. This level of sealing power was almost the same as the power of the Azura contract in the Azura field. It was absolutely not something a human could contend against. 3 days later, Lu Yi walked out with sunken eyes and a defeated expression. He could not stay in the Wanxiang Sea any longer. He had to hurry back to the 9 provinces. He really could not understand. Huaxi was clearly weaker than Su Yuqing, but why was her endurance so much better than Su Yuqing's in some aspects? Did this have nothing to do with strength? How could it have nothing to do with strength? You're finally out. Tang Jun suddenly appeared in front of him with an impatient look. When he saw Lu Yi's appearance he was shocked. What happened to you? Lu Yi's tone was mournful. Something went wrong with my cultivation. It's nothing serious. What's the matter? Old Tang glanced at him suspiciously before hurriedly saying, Someone came from home. Who came from home? Lu Yi was stunned for a moment, then looked puzzled. How did someone come from home? You'll know when you come and see. Moments later, Lu Yi followed Tang Jun into a secret chamber. Wan Xiao and He Baichuan were both here, one standing and one sitting. There was another person lying on the bed next to them. There was a bloody smell in the secret room, probably because someone was injured and had overflowed. Lu Yi stared at the bed with a puzzled expression. Fellow Taoist Su? He knew the injured cultivator on the bed. It was Su Yiming whom he had interacted with in the Jade Conch world. Although they were not very familiar with each other, they had at least met a few times. Why are you here? Who hurt you? Lu Yi asked. Su Yiming smiled at Lu Yi and shook his head. No one hurt me. This injury was caused when I was passing through the insect tunnel. A passageway. Lu Yi's expression changed. Could it be the passageway between myriad manifestations and Jade Conch? Su Yiming nodded. It's passable, although it's not very stable. Lu Yi was overjoyed. This was like someone giving him a pillow when he was sleepy. He was still thinking about bringing Wan Xiao with him when he returned to 9 provinces to deal with the invasion of Purple Jade's demonic cultivators. However, Wan Xiao was already in the sunshine and could not be kept in the Little Flower realm. He was not sure if he could let her follow him through the Soul Clan's ancestral land. However, if the insect tunnel could be passed through, all the problems would be solved. When did this happen? Lu Yi hurriedly asked. Not long ago, cough cough. Su Yiming coughed violently before he finished speaking. Let me tell you. Wan Xiao patted his back and took over the conversation. After her explanation, Lu Yi slowly understood the changes on the insect tunnel. In fact, when he returned to 9 provinces last time, someone reported to him that there were some changes on the insect tunnel, and he personally went to check it out. Because Lu Yi and Tang Jun had experienced entering myriad manifestations see through the insect tunnel, the corresponding position of the insect tunnel could be determined. However, they could not be sure if the insect tunnel could be stabilized or when it would be. Therefore, long ago, Lu Yi had asked the Jade Conch domain to send people to guard the entrance of the insect tunnel and monitor the changes on the insect tunnel at all times. All these years, Su Yiming had been in charge of this. The formation of the insect tunnel had many elements of chance and coincidence. It was not something that could be interfered with by humans, and not every insect tunnel could be passed through. In this vast starry sky, there would be new insect tunnels born every once in a while, and old insect tunnels would collapse. Therefore, after the insect tunnel was formed, it needed to be stable enough for people to pass through. If it was not stable enough, it would not work. This kind of thing depended on luck. Some insect tunnels were still chaotic after tens of thousands of years, and some were extremely stable when they were just formed. There was no pattern at all. No one could predict whether the insect tunnel connecting the Jade Conch domain to Myriad Manifestations Galaxy would be stable. They could only wait for the test of time. Not long ago, Su Yiming sensed that the insect tunnel had changed again. He immediately went in to investigate. He had done this a few times in the past. Normally, with Yu Yao's cultivation, there would be no problem as long as he did not stay for too long near the entrance of the insect tunnel. However, something unexpected happened this time. After Su Yiming entered the insect tunnel changed again. As a result, he got lost in the insect tunnel and could not find his way. He could only follow the insect tunnel and move forward. There were many dangers along the way. This was because an unstable insect tunnel would erupt with void turbulence. That was how Su Yiming got injured. The last time he encountered danger, he fainted. He did not know what happened after that. When he woke up again, he was already rescued. The people who saved him were a few Constellation Realm cultivators. He did not know which galaxy they came from, but they were quite kind. After Su Yiming woke up, he asked these people for some information. Only then did he know that he had unknowingly arrived at Myriad Manifestations Galaxy. He was surprised and delighted. He asked them to bring him to the Myriad Manifestations Sea and found the Three-World Island. Half a day ago, Su Yiming had just arrived at the Three-World Island. When they saw him, Wan Xiao and He Baichuan could not believe their eyes. Old Tang wanted to contact Lu Yi immediately, but there was no reply until Lu Yi suddenly appeared. Did anything happen in this galaxy? Lu Yi asked hurriedly. Although he was sure that the Purple Jade Demonic Cultivator Army had not arrived at Jade Conch, since Su Yiming was here, he could ask about it. Su Yiming shook his head. Nothing happened. Everything is fine. However, I heard that there is a training field in the Nine Heavens realm. Even Constellation Realm cultivators can enter it to train. There are many mysteries and benefits, so many people from Jade Conch and Green Dawn Realm have brought their families to the Nine Heavens. The news spread quickly. However, there was no problem. Even if people from the other 2 realms came and went, it would not be a big burden to Little Nine. What happened? Su Yiming asked. Nothing. Don't worry and recuperate. Lu Yi comforted him. Su Yiming nodded and remembered something. By the way, please take good care of the little friends who escorted me here. Lu Yi said, don't worry, we will not be rude. Su Yiming was left to recuperate while He Baichuan took care of him personally. Lu Yi brought Wan Xiao and Tang Jun out. After pondering for a while, Lu Yi turned to Tang Jun. Give them some spiritual jades and spiritual weapons. Don't be stingy. Give them more. Tang Jun said, I have contacted them before. They seem to want to join the Three-World Island. What do you think? You decide. Lu Yi was too lazy to worry about these trivial matters. If it was in the past, the Three-World Island would not accept cultivators from other galaxies. However, things were different now. The Three-World Island was the dominant force on the Vientiane Sea. There were not so many taboos. It was just a few Constellation Realm cultivators. Tang Jun nodded and went to deal with this matter. Lu Yi looked at Wan Xiao. Senior sister, follow me to check on the insect path. If there is no problem, we will return to the 9 states through it. Wan Xiao nodded. All right. However, junior brother, please wait for a moment. There is someone else who wants to come with us. Who? Wan Xiao smiled. You will know soon. Lu Yi was confused. They were returning to the Jade Conch Galaxy this time. It was only right to bring Yuan Xiao back. After all, she was a sunshine and could be of great use. As for the others, Lu Yi did not plan to bring them. Now that the Vientiane Sea had just settled, the three-world island was already short of manpower. Hence, Lu Yi was not sure who was going back with them. However, Yuan Xiao did not explain. She only sent out some messages. Soon, figures gathered from all directions. The first to arrive was the group of Yu Yao who had recently advanced on the Vientiane Sea. They were all from the Jade Conch Galaxy. Then came the Constellation Realm cultivators. There were cultivators from all three realms, led by the group from the 9 states. The sect master, Master Yun Xuechu, eldest senior brother Feng Wujiang, Giant Armor, third senior brother Li Baxin, Nian Yuxian, Yu Ji, Meng Jie, Jianghu Hong. Looking at these familiar faces, Lu Yi did not know what to say. Tang Yifeng came forward and patted Lu Ye's shoulder. The matters of our homeland are not your problem alone. We have cultivated steadily on the Wanxiang Sea for so many years, and you have been at the front of many battles. We can't always let you do the work alone. We can also fight and fight. Feng Wujiang also smiled at Lu Yi. Little junior brother, you have foresight, but don't forget that there are people behind you. Jian Guhong stroked his sword and said in a low voice, the sword is wailing. It has not tasted blood for a long time. I hope we can have a good battle this time. Li Baxin looked at this old senior's profound style and sighed. Looking at the many familiar faces and the light in their eyes, Lu Yi knew that he could not refuse this trip. Moreover, he knew that the 9 states cultivators were never flowers raised in a greenhouse. Every 9 states cultivator had experienced countless life and death situations and walked step by step to reach where they were today. Since they wanted to follow Lu Yi back to their homeland, it meant that they had disregarded life and death. I understand. Lu Yi nodded. Then please follow me back to our homeland and fight the foreign enemies. Those who dare invade our galaxy will not be able to return. That's right. Tang Yifeng was greatly comforted. End of chapter. Chapter 2014. The cultivators of this galaxy weren't the only ones who wanted to return with Lu Yi and participate in the Battle of Jade Conch. Soon he saw another group of people. Lu Yi was shocked to see the group of merfolk cultivators led by Yen Miao rushing over. Grand Elder, why are you here? And Princess Yu. Following behind Yen Miao was the mermaid princess, Bai Lu. The merfolk race didn't have many people to begin with, and they had even fewer people who could fight. There were almost 200 of them, including Yen Miao, who was the only sunshine, and Yu Yao. Almost all of them had come. It could be said that the merfolk tribe had brought out all the elites who could fight. Only a small number of people from the constellation and below remained in the merfolk tribe's territory. We're here to help, Yen Miao replied with a smile. Junior martial brother, don't be in a hurry to refuse. Take us with you. There will be a surprise. Lu Yi didn't know what kind of surprise it would be, but if the merfolk race suffered any losses in such a great battle, he would be committing a grave sin. This was probably the last merfolk tribe in the universe. Lu Yi wanted to refuse immediately. It was only natural that this group of cultivators from the 3 realms would want to return with him. After all, Zixian had invaded their respective galaxies. However, the merfolk race was different. As if reading Lu Ye's mind, Yen Miao interrupted him before he could say anything. Junior martial brother, you've done a great favor for our race. Now that there's a chance, please give us a chance to serve and repay your kindness, okay? Bai Lu took a step forward and grabbed Lu Ye's arm tightly, not caring that her breasts were pressed against Lu Ye's body. Senior martial brother, if you don't agree, I won't let go. Lu Ye's heart was as cold as ice and as calm as an ancient well. However, he suddenly sensed something and hurriedly turned to look in a certain direction. In that direction, Hua Xi had appeared on the windowsill on the 2nd floor at some point. She leaned against the window with a radiant smile on her face, looking at him meaningfully. Lu Ye's legs softened and he sighed, since everyone is so considerate, then I thank everyone in advance. Yen Miao didn't expect him to agree so easily. He nodded and said, don't worry, we won't disappoint you. Lu Yi discreetly pulled his arm out of Bai Lu's grasp and looked around. There were about 2,000 cultivators from the 3 realms and the merfolk tribe who would be returning to the solar system with him. Among them there were only Yuan Xiao and Yen Miao from the Sunshine Plain. There weren't many people from the Yu Yao Plain either, about 40 in total. However, this was all that the 3-world island could offer at the moment. In the end, they still needed some cultivators to stay behind and watch over the myriad Elephant Sea. The plan had to be changed. Little Flower Realm could not hold so many people. Open the warehouse and use the warships we captured before, Lu Yi ordered. There was no need to investigate the situation at the insect path. Since Su Yiming could come over, it meant that the insect path was passable. It was just not stable enough. With the protection of the warship, there shouldn't be too much of a problem. Upon receiving the order, everyone immediately busied themselves. Three World Island had a large number of battleships, thanks to the gift from Purple Jade Island. During the war with Purple Jade had sent a fleet to attack Three World Island. In the end, Lu Yi single-handedly stopped them. Such a large fleet did not perform at all. After Purple Jade was defeated, only a small number of these battleships were taken away by Purple Jade cultivators. Most of them were left behind. Naturally, they became Three World Island spoils of war. They were not usually used, so they were sealed in a huge warehouse. Lu Yi didn't expect to use them one day. Half a day later, countless cultivators looked up. A huge central battleship stood in the sky above Three World Island, almost covering half of the island. Outside this central battleship, there were many tiger shark battleships protecting it. There were many of them. No one knew what had happened. However, judging by the actions of the Three World Island, it was obvious that a battle had broken out. Thus many people were confused. The Three World Island had the final say in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. What kind of enemy could make them put on such a grand display? Rumors spread like wildfire. Soon, news that Three World Island was going to attack the Yuan world spread. The news also quickly reached Juyan. She was now overseeing the Myriad Elephant Island. She was very efficient and had already started rebuilding the Myriad Elephant Chamber of Commerce. She immediately sent a message to Lu Yi to ask about the situation. She had already discussed everything with Lu Yi. If Lu Yi were to send troops to attack the Yuan world at this time, it would be too unkind. Lu Yi's explanation dispelled her doubts. Many cultivators in the central battleship carried out their duties. At Lu Yi's command, the huge battleship flew into the distance, followed closely by many tiger sharks. When the battleship left the Myriad Elephant Sea and showed no intention of heading to any of the Myriad Elephant Galaxy's realms, the previous rumors were dispelled. However, the news that Lu Yi had left with many cultivators from Three World Island could not be concealed. Even so, no one on the Myriad Elephant Sea dared to do anything. In front of the Myriad Elephant Sea and the Jade Conch Island, the huge fleet slowly arrived and stopped. On the central battleship, Lu Yi's figure appeared and flew toward the bug path. From afar, the huge bug path spun slowly like a whirlpool, giving off an indescribably strange aura. Lu Yi only needed a glance to know that this bug path was not stable enough. Lu Yi had passed through many bug paths over the years, so his knowledge and experience were naturally much greater than before. It was only in the process of gradually stabilizing, which was why Su Yiming could pass through it without any danger. However, in such a state, there were bound to be some unpredictable dangers. Su Yiming was not weak. His cultivation was at the late stage Yao realm. However, this cultivation level was not enough for him to pass through. Ordinary tiger shark battleships would not be able to withstand the invasion of the void turbulence in the bug path. In other words, apart from him, Luan Xiao and Yen Miao who could force their way through this bug path, anyone else would be at risk. Fortunately, he had brought the central battleship with him this time. In terms of defensive strength, this weapon was not inferior to any Yu Yao and was much stronger than the tiger shark battleships. Therefore, as long as the central battleship's defenses were prepared, passing through the bug path would not be a problem. Moreover, he had a treasure that should be able to greatly reduce the risk of passing through the bug path. After carefully observing for a while, Lu Yi gave the order. Soon, the cultivators put away their respective tiger shark battleships and gathered on the central battleship. After a while of preparation, the central battleship buzzed, and a bright light film covered the surface of the battleship. It was extremely solid. Under the premise of not caring about the consumption of spiritual jades, the two Sunshine cultivators personally activated the battleship's defensive formation. It could be said that the central battleship's defensive strength had been raised to the limit. Follow me. Lu Yi transmitted his voice and led the way into the bug path. The world spun and their vision changed. Unlike the normal stable bug path, entering this place was quite a bumpy feeling, as if they were sitting on a carriage that was speeding on a potholed road. From time to time, an inexplicable force would sweep past them. With his previous experience, Lu Yi naturally knew that it was the void turbulence. This thing was very dangerous. If one was swept in and could not resist it, it was easy to be injured or even lost. Lu Yi activated Sunshine's magic power to protect his body. When the turbulence swept over, it was blocked by his magic power. Of course, this was also related to the fact that the bug path was not that chaotic. In a truly chaotic place, the void turbulence's threat would be greater. His divine thought was greatly suppressed in this place. Fortunately, the central battleship followed him into the bug path and was not too far away. He could still sense the presence of the battleship. At the same time, his divine thought surged and led the way for the battleship. Along the way in this place, time and space seemed to become blurry. At first, there was not much of a problem, but as they moved forward, the void turbulence's eruptions became more frequent. Although Lu Yi could still deal with it for safety's sake, he still took out his treasure. It was an item that looked like white jade, like a lotus root. The void beast's core. This was his spoil of war in the reincarnation tree's world. When he and Tang Jun first fell into the bug path, they were able to escape because of this item's power. At that time, his constellation cultivation was unable to activate this item, so he could only borrow Tang Jun's power. Now it was not so troublesome. Sunshine's magic power was activated, and the void beast's core immediately rippled with layers of white light. The light spread in all directions like a small invisible hand, calming the turbulence in the void turbulence. Lu Yi immediately felt his entire body relax. The void beast's core was indeed the right thing to use in this place. The path ahead was unobstructed. Jade Conch Galaxy beside the entrance of the bug path. A palace stood on a huge meteorite. This was the palace that Su Yiming had built. After all, he had been guarding this place all year round, so he needed a suitable place to cultivate. Building a palace did not take much effort. Yu Yao, like him, did not have many requirements for a living environment. A place to hide was enough. At this time, many people had gathered at the palace. The leader was the Jade Conch Galaxy's realm lord, Cho Wu. Han Dong, who had helped Lu Yi forge the scabbard of the Pan Mountain Saber, was also here. Other than them, there were two other Yu Yao gathered. Apart from them, there was also a group of constellation cultivators. These constellation cultivators were originally from Su Yiming's lineage. They followed him to guard this place and monitor the bug path. However, 10 days ago, Su Yiming's bug path disappeared. This was something that had never happened before. The constellation cultivators panicked and hurriedly sent a message to the Jade Conch Galaxy. The news was relayed by the cultivators and reached Cho Wu's ears in less than half a day. He hurriedly brought people to investigate personally. However, they did not find any clues. Now they only knew that Su Yiming was trapped in the bug path. He should still be alive because the musical note imprint had not shattered. However, they could not contact him. This made them very anxious. I think it's better for me to go. Han Dong volunteered. Senior Marshal Brother Su isn't dead. He's probably trapped inside. Perhaps it's time for him to need help. Chapter 2015. No. Cho Wu hurriedly waved his hand to refuse. In terms of cultivation, Su Yiming was much stronger than Han Dong. If even he fell into the worm path, even if Han Dong really went in, it would not be a good thing. He could not let Han Dong take this risk. However, he could not leave Su Yiming alone. Judging from the current situation, Su Yiming must have encountered some trouble in the worm path. After thinking for a long time, Cho Wu finally calmed down. I'll go in myself. As soon as he said this, the few Yueyao hurriedly dissuaded him. Cho Wu was the realm lord and the most prestigious person in the entire Jade Conch domain. How could they let him do this? They all volunteered. There's no need to say more. Cho Wu's expression was firm. I've made up my mind. Besides, I have my own methods. I have a better chance of escaping than you guys going in. That's it, you guys stay outside. As he said this, he rushed towards the worm path in a flash. The few Yueyao from Jade Conch domain could not stop him in time. They could only watch as he rushed into the worm path. They were all nervous. Han Dong was even more anxious. However, in the next moment, Cho Wu, who had entered the worm path, actually flew back quickly. The few of them hurriedly went up to greet him. Before they could speak, they stared at the figure behind Cho Wu in shock. Fellow Taoist Lu? Han Dong recognized Lu Yi at a glance. Among the cultivators of Jade Conch domain, he had spent the most time with Lu Yi and their friendship was the deepest. For a moment he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. Otherwise, why would he see Lu Yi here? Fellow Taoists, how have you been? Lu Yi greeted everyone with a smile on his face. He was in a good mood after passing through the insect path so smoothly. This undoubtedly meant that from now on, there would be a stable passageway between all creations and Jade Conch that was barely passable. If the cultivators of this galaxy wanted to go to Vientiane, they would not have to wait for him to come back. This matter could be left to Yuan Xiao to handle. The Void Beast Core also had to be given to her. With the help of this item, it would be easy for her to bring people through the worm path. A worm path connecting the home galaxy and the Vientiane Sea would be of great benefit to future development. Is it really fellow Taoist Lu? Han Dong was extremely shocked. Why are you? Cho Wu hurriedly said, let's talk later. Let's get out of the way first. As he said this, he activated his magic power and swept everyone away. The group of people didn't know what was going on. They looked at Cho Wu as if he was hiding from something, but soon they knew what he was hiding from. A corner of the enormous worm tunnel that was spinning like a vortex appeared first, as if an evil dragon had poked its head out of its cave. Then, a huge body appeared. The Yueyao of the Jade Conch realm were dumbfounded. No one had ever seen such a huge and imposing battleship. When such a battleship slowly sailed out of the insect passage, anyone who saw it for the first time couldn't help but feel their hair stand on end. The battleship was filled with a destructive aura that made one's soul tremble. Just imagine, if such a huge battleship suddenly descended upon the Jade Conch sector. Who would be able to stop it? Seeing their expressions, Lu Yi explained, "This is our own warship." Our own. The Yueyao of the Jade Conch realm were in a daze. Although they knew that the cultivators of the three realms had developed well in the Wanxiang Sea, this could be seen from the large amounts of spiritual jades and cultivation resources that Lu Yi had brought back several times. However, no one knew the specifics. After all, Lu Yi was the only cultivator who had left the galaxy and returned after so many years, and Lu Yi rarely talked about it in detail. Now, they knew that their galaxy had developed well in the Wanxiang Sea. They even had such a battleship. Even if they hadn't seen the world and didn't know the level of such a battleship, they could tell with a little judgment that such a battleship was not something that an ordinary force could possess. What surprised them even more was that a familiar aura rose from the interior of the battleship. Then a person rushed out and appeared in front of them in an instant. Greetings, senior brothers and junior brothers. Cho Wu took a closer look and was delighted. Junior sister Luan? His voice suddenly paused and he looked surprised. Your cultivation. There was something wrong with Yuan Xiao's aura. Compared to when she left that year, it was many times more profound and vast. Cho Wu's eyes widened instantly, and a thought uncontrollably emerged in his mind. Could it be? Yuan Xiao turned to look at Lu Yi. With junior brother Lu's help, I broke through to the Sunshine Realm more than a year ago. Sunshine. The few Yueyao of the Jade Conch boundary were all shocked by this news. Sunshine. That was a realm that they had been searching for many years, but they couldn't reach. Now, there was actually someone in their boundary who had reached this height. Good. Cho Wu was overjoyed. He looked at Yuan Xiao with a gratified expression, and his eyes were a little moist. There's finally sunshine in our boundary. With the first, there would be a second one in the future. At this moment he suddenly realized something and looked at Lu Yi. Fellow Taoist, you're also in the Sunshine Realm, right? Just now, when he entered the worm passage, he bumped into Lu Yi who was walking toward him. He didn't have time to ask too much and he didn't even notice the change in Lu Ye's aura. Now that he had a comparison he suddenly realized. Lu Yi nodded, I just broke through. Fellow Taoist, you're amazing. Cho Wu sighed. Yuan Xiao was able to break through to the Sunshine Realm because of the accumulation of many years of cultivation. Lu Yi was very young, but now he had surpassed her. In comparison, the old guys who had been cultivating for many years but still couldn't break through to the Sunshine Realm were not worth mentioning. As they spoke, the aura of another Sunshine Realm cultivator appeared and slowly swept over. Cho Wu looked at Miao Yan who was standing beside Yuan Xiao in surprise. This is the great elder of the mermaid race, Miao Yan. Yuan Xiao took the initiative to introduce her. She had a good relationship with Miao Yan. The reason why the two of them could break through to the Sunshine Realm was because they had spent many years together exploring and communicating. It could be said that after all these years, the two women were like sisters. Cho Wu and the others had naturally never heard of the mermaid race, but in front of Sunshine, no one dared to be negligent, and they all greeted him. After exchanging a few pleasantries, Han Tong stepped forward and said, Fellow cultivator Lu, you've returned from the insect path. Does this mean that the insect path can be used again? Lu Yi nodded and said, It's barely enough but it's quite risky. We'll talk about this in detail later. By the way, fellow cultivator Su Yiming is fine for the time being. You don't have to worry. He suffered some injuries while passing through the insect path and is now recuperating at the Wanxiang Sea. Everyone felt relieved when they heard this. They had gathered here because something had happened to Su Yiming. Now that they knew that he was recuperating at the Wanxiang Sea, they naturally didn't have to worry. Fellow cultivator Lu, why did you bring so many people back this time? Cho Wu keenly noticed that a large number of cultivators had gathered on the central warship. Did something happen at the Wanxiang Sea? Lu Yi said, the trouble at the Wanxiang Sea is not big. It's been resolved. Now it's our Jade Snail Galaxy that's in trouble. Cho Wu was puzzled. What trouble? He vaguely sensed that this trouble might not be small. Otherwise Lu Yi and the others would not have made such a big fuss. Lu Yi thought for a moment and said, to be honest, the Nine Heavens is not called the Nine Heavens Realm, but the Nine Prefectures. However, because the Nine Prefectures is involved in a grudge from 10,000 years ago, we can't use the name of the Nine Heavens. Now, a force called the Zixuan Demonic Planet has received information about the Nine Prefectures. An army of 10 Suns demonic cultivators is on their way to invade. Although the name of the Nine Prefectures had not spread far and wide, the Zixuan Demonic Planet must have heard about it. Since that was the case, there was no need to hide anything from the cultivators of this galaxy. At the very least, they had the right to know where this grudge came from. The Three-World Island and the Zixuan Demonic Planet had a conflict at the Wanxiang Sea. The Zixuan Demonic Planet suffered great losses, so the other party is coming with ill intentions. I received the news from a certain channel, so I brought people back to help. Only then did Cho Wu and the others understand why Lu Yi brought back such a huge warship and so many cultivators on this trip. However, 10 Suns? Cho Wu was shocked. His excitement from Wan Xiao's advancement to the Suns vanished instantly. Among the people present there were 3 Suns, but the other side had 10. How could they fight? The Zixuan Demonic Planet? Are they very strong? Someone asked. Lu Yi nodded. Very strong. The Zixuan Demonic Planet is one of the top forces in the starry sky. They have long been famous in the starry sky. Compared to them, our Jade Conch is nothing. Everyone's expression became more and more serious. Wan Xiao said, the Zixuan Demonic Planet is indeed powerful, but there's no need to be too nervous. Something happened on this trip to the Wanxiang Sea. Junior brother Lu single-handedly killed 6 or 7 Suns. Since we're back now, we naturally have a way to deal with it. As she spoke, she quietly glared at Lu Yi, telling him not to scare her senior brothers and junior brothers who had never seen the world. Killed 6 or 7 Suns. Han Dong's eyes were about to pop out. Fellow Taoist Lu, didn't you say you just advanced? He had just advanced and was already so fierce? They were just happy that Wan Xiao had become the first Suns in Jade Conch. Now, compared with Lu Ye's achievements, what was the difference? Cho Wu calmed down and looked at Lu Yi. Fellow Taoist, are we confident in dealing with the Zixuan invasion? Lu Yi nodded, full of confidence. We'll make sure they don't return. Seeing that he was so confident, everyone felt relieved. Cho Wu said, the 3 realms of our galaxy are bound together. If there's anything you need from our Jade Conch in this battle, just say it. We'll do it without hesitation. Lu Yi did not stand on ceremony. Then I'd like to ask the Realm Master to immediately gather all the capable fighters in the Jade Conch sector. This battle will be the battle that will make our galaxy famous. I want to fight the Zixuan Demonic Planet to a draw. After this battle, no one will dare to offend our galaxy. Even though Lu Yi had said that the Zixuan Demonic Planet was a top force, it was difficult to feel the weight of a top force outside of the galaxy. Even so, everyone was excited by Lu Ye's words. Cho Wu immediately responded, I'll go back and arrange it. Where's the gathering place? Jutian? Juzhou? No. Lu Yi shook his head and looked in a direction. The Qingli Taoist world. Chapter 2016. It was not that Lu Yi wanted to place the battlefield in the Qingli Dao world, but if they followed his previous route into the Jade Conch galaxy, the Qingli Dao world would be the first to bear the brunt. This world was not far from the chaotic explosion zone. Although Zixian's target was the 9 states, if they rushed out of the chaotic explosion zone and found the Qingli Dao world, any one of Rizhao's attacks would be enough to destroy the Qingli Dao world. Of course, if they did not find it or if they did not care, the Qingli Dao world would not be in any danger. But no one could guarantee this. Since that was the case, the battlefield had to be chosen before the Zixian army reached the Qingli Dao world. It would be best if they could block them at the exit of the chaotic explosion zone. Chou Wu left with a few Yu Yao from the Jade Conch Galaxy, preparing to follow Lu Ye's instructions and return to their world to gather the cultivators who could fight. After a while, the central battleship changed direction and flew towards the Qingli Dao world. Lu Yi was alone and embarked on the journey back to the 9 states. This place was very close to the original Wushuang continent and was not far from the 9 states. With his current speed, he had crossed it in just half a day. Thinking back to the past, with the cultivation of the constellations, it would take months to rush here from the 9 states. Half a day later, Lu Yi stood in the vast starry sky, looking shocked and uncertain. He looked in front of him and frowned. Where was the 9 states? Where was the huge 9 states? And the blood-refining world? And the Fangsuan mountain? They had all disappeared without a trace. Knowing the way in the starry sky was a necessary survival skill for every cultivator, especially when the Jade Conch Galaxy was the galaxy where he was born. It could be said that there were many stars nearby, and what their arrangement was, he could imagine it with his eyes closed. But the place where the 9 states used to be was now empty. Not only the 9 states but the blood-refining world and the Fangsuan mountain were all gone. Lu Yi could not help but wonder if he had gone the wrong way. But thinking about it carefully, it was not very likely. Instead, he thought of another possibility. He immersed himself in his thoughts, raised his hand and pressed on his battlefield imprint and said, "Little Nine, stop fooling around. Hee, you found out." Little Nine's voice immediately came into his ears, obviously a little proud. Sure enough, Lu Yi knew that his guess was right. Back then, under the cover of the mysterious power of the supreme treasure, the Azura field, the vast Azura domain had never appeared in front of anyone for countless years. Anyone who entered the Azura domain and passed the test would directly appear in the heavenly Azura world. It was only when the Azura field closed that the true Azura domain was exposed. Now that Little Nine had obtained the Azura field's treasure, Lu Yi guessed that it should be able to display some similar abilities. Sure enough, he did not see the 9 provinces, not because he had taken the wrong path, but because this part of the galaxy had been concealed by Little Nine using the power of the Azura field. What he saw was all an illusion. The real starry sky was hidden in this illusion, and there were no flaws. Attribute treasures and supreme treasures couldn't be compared in terms of power. The mysterious power of the Azura field could cover the entire Azura domain, which was an enormous space formed by countless galaxies. Little Nine couldn't even cover the entire Jade Conch Galaxy, but covering a region near the 9 provinces wasn't a problem. "Close your eyes." Little Nine's voice rang out again. Lu Yi closed his eyes helplessly. "Open your eyes," Little Nine ordered again. At the same time, Lu Yi clearly felt a mysterious power fall on his body. When he opened his eyes again, the scene before him changed drastically. The 9 provinces appeared in his field of vision again, and beside it was the blood-smelting world. "Is it fun?" Little Nine said happily. "In the future, without my permission, no one can enter the 9 provinces." If it had obtained this method earlier, Black Cloud wouldn't have been able to find the 9 provinces back then. But it was also helpless. When Lu Yi returned with the Azura field treasure, Black Cloud had already entered the 9 provinces. It was not too late now. Now that the 9 provinces was covered by the power of the Azura field treasure, it would be difficult to encounter too much danger in the future. Unfortunately, he couldn't guarantee that the Zixuan army would come straight to the 9 provinces and not disturb the Qingli Dao world. If he could guarantee this, he could completely place the battlefield on the 9 provinces side. Think about it, if the Zixuan army followed the route given by Black Cloud but couldn't find the 9 provinces, the scene would be hilarious. With the power of the Azura field treasure, Little Nine could completely divide the battlefield into different spaces. It probably couldn't support the sunshine level, but under the sunshine level, it could create a geographical advantage for the cultivators of the 3 realms and greatly reduce the risk of the cultivators of the 3 realms. Suppressing this thought, Lu Yi said, "Little Nine, in my name, summon the constellations of the 9 provinces that can fight." "What's wrong?" Little Nine was shocked. "There's going to be a fight." Lu Yi said it casually, but Little Nine still felt that the scene this time was not ordinary. Asking Little Nine to help summon the constellations of the 9 provinces, Lu Yi didn't return to the 9 provinces, but went directly to the Fangsuan mountain. After a short while, on the Immortal Spirit Peak, 4 figures gathered. Su Yuqing, Qin Xianhai, Wu Qima and Dong Fang, the 3 sunshine cultivators gathered here. After confirming that Lu Yi had become a sunshine cultivator, they all congratulated him. After some small talk, Lu Yi stated his purpose. Qin Xianhai understood. Zixin's 10 demon lords are attacking. You want to summon the sunshine cultivators of the south and west to help? Yes. Lu Yi nodded. Including me, there are only 3 sunshine cultivators from the Three Realms Island, and all of them have just become sunshine cultivators. I'm afraid they won't be able to deal with Zixin, so I'll have to ask the senior brothers and sisters of Mount Fangcuan to help. Qin Shenhai smiled. That's not a problem. Now that you're the master of Mount Fangcuan, the east will support you. The south and west won't refuse either. Then I'll have to trouble you, senior brother Qin? Leave it to me. Qin Shenhai nodded. In the past, the humanoid race rarely participated in the battles of other races. They basically didn't have any grudges with other races. The only enemy of the entire race was the blood race. But the situation was different now. Lu Yi had refined the core of Mount Fangcuan, and was the master of Mount Fangcuan. He was bound to Mount Fangcuan for good or ill. Moreover, Lu Yi was the successor of the Dao tree. His future was limitless, and he had become a sunshine cultivator in such a short time. Naturally, he was worth following. He and Su Yuqing were also Dao companions. It could be said that Lu Ye's matters were Mount Fangcuan's matters. So when Lu Yi mentioned it, Qin Shenhai agreed without hesitation. Thank you, senior brother Qin. Lu Yi thanked him. Then he remembered something. Alright, didn't we kill Zixin and He Yun? He appeared in the Wanxiang Sea again, and he's even stronger than before. Do the 3 of you know what's going on? The art of external incarnation. Su Yuqing said slowly. But it's not an ordinary external incarnation. It should be a Dharma body. The one we killed previously was a Dharma body. The one you met in the Wanxiang Sea should be the real one, so he's even stronger. The art of external incarnation. Lu Yi felt like he had seen this information somewhere before, but he couldn't remember where. Seeing his confusion, Su Yuqing hesitated for a moment, then said, in the path of cultivation, sunshine is the most important. Once you reach the peak of sunshine, you can't advance any further. But it's the natural instinct of cultivators to pursue breakthroughs. Therefore, before the time is right, some sunshine cultivators will use some special methods to prepare in advance. Dharma bodies are one of them. He Yun was able to condense a Dharma body, so he's undoubtedly a peak sunshine cultivator. Following her explanation, Lu Yi suddenly remembered where he had seen records of the art of external incarnation. It was in the Ocean Tower of the Heavenly Azura clan. There was a record of it in a tattered jade slip. It was similar to Su Yuqing's explanation. Something about not being able to solve the problem at the root, and the art of external incarnation. Other than that, is there any other art of inner core? Lu Yi asked. This was the information recorded in the jade slip. Yes. Su Yuqing nodded. Suddenly she blushed. I used the art of inner core. Lu Yi blinked. He suddenly remembered that Su Yuqing gave him something that looked like an inner core and asked him to cultivate it so that he could qualify to participate in the Blackpool Martial Arts exhibition. In the end, the inner core entered his body and was refined by the talent tree. It allowed his strength to increase significantly in a short period of time. Su Yuqing realized that she wanted to retrieve her inner core. That's why they had physical contact. The sound of a sword rang. Lu Ye's thoughts were interrupted. He turned his head and saw Qin Shenhai wielding his rune sword. This is my method. Junior brother Lu, you have extraordinary aptitude. Sooner or later you will reach this step. However, no matter what method you use, it's actually storing the cultivation that you have cultivated but can't increase anymore. Lu Yi suddenly understood. Whether it was the Dharmakaya, inner core, or Qin Shenhai's rune sword, they were all the helpless actions of cultivators who had reached the peak but couldn't increase their cultivation. It was the storage of their own cultivation. Thinking of this, he turned his head to look at Wu Qima. He wanted to know what this senior brother Wu's method was. Wu Qima's face darkened. I haven't reached that step yet. I'll tell you when I reach that step. Lu Yi understood. It seemed that in terms of cultivation, Su Yuqing and Qin Shenhai had both reached their own limits. They were much stronger than Wu Qima. He didn't ask any more questions. He had been aware of this for a long time. Some things could be seen clearly when one stood at a certain height. I'll have to trouble senior brother Chen with the southern and western matters. I have to go out for a trip. I'll be back in a day. Lu Yi stood up. Do you want me to go with you? Su Yuqing asked. No need. I'm just going to find reinforcements. Lu Yi waved his hand and soared into the sky. Find reinforcements? Qin Shenhai looked puzzled. What kind of reinforcements could there be in this starry sky? If Lu Yi wanted to return in a day, he wouldn't go too far. Moreover, reinforcements that could play a role in the battle against Zixian's army were not easy to find. According to the information Lu Yi had received, Zixian had 10 demon venerables coming. The size of the army was unknown. Fangsuan Mountain could handle these 10 demon venerables. In this way, the three Sunshine of the Three-World Island could do whatever they wanted. This battle was already half won. If Lu Yi could find some qualified reinforcements, Zixian would definitely lose this time. It seems that our junior brother Lu still has a trump card. Wu Qimo rubbed his chin thoughtfully. He couldn't help but be curious about Lu Xian's mysterious actions. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.